Hi everyone, Joshua Hanlon here. Today I'm in Albany, New York, and I am next to the World War II destroyer escort, the USS Slater. I'm joined by John Epp, the curator of the ship. So he's going to start off by giving us a little bit of a history and an overview of the ship and kind of why this is significant. So how did this end up here in Albany? What's the history of this?
Sure. So construction on the Slater started in March of 1943, built down in Tampa, Florida by the Tampa Shipbuilding Company. Took approximately 11 months from keel laying to launching, launched February of 44. Commissioned on May 1st of 44. The summer of 1944, they kept the ship in the Florida area undergoing training. It was a target for torpedo bombers. They would drop training torpedoes just to get that training in for the pilots. And then in the fall of 1944, the ship received orders to travel north to Boston and then to New York City to begin escorting groups of large convoys from New York City to England and then back. So this ship is designed specifically to hunt submarines, sink those submarines, and then also the anti-aircraft guns to shoot down any attacking planes. Germany surrenders in May of 45, and then the summer of 45, she goes to the Pacific. By the time she arrives in the Marshall Islands, Japan surrenders. Stays in the Pacific, going from all the various islands, ports in Japan, was in Tokyo a few times, comes back to the US in 1946, decommissioned, placed in the mothball in Green Cove Springs, Florida. Some ships sat for years or decades. The Slater only sat until the summer of 1950, at which point we decided to start giving away our World War II ships to other countries. The Slater was designated to go to Greece, into the Hellenic Navy. So they tugged her, along with another destroyer escort, from Florida north to Boston, overhauled the ship a little bit, new equipment, modern equipment, and then gave the ship to the Greek Navy, and they commissioned her into the Greek Navy in March of 1951, renamed Aiatos, means eagle. And the Greeks used the eagle for 40 years, until 1991, at which point they decommissioned the ship, and they had preliminary plans to actually tear it apart and sell the ship for scrap. It's estimated about $125,000 they would have gotten out of the ship. The stars kind of aligned. We keep saying the ship is a lucky ship for World War II, but also post-war. So right around the same time they decommissioned the Eagle, there was a group of World War II veterans that served on these ships. Destroyer Escort Sales Association, DESA. Unfortunately, they're now defunct. It was mainly World War II vets. But they had their annual conference, and somebody asked the question, is it possible to locate one of our destroyer escorts, turn it into a museum? They reached out to the Greeks when they heard about the Slater. The Greek government thought it was a fabulous idea, so they said, you can have this ship for free. Caveat is, you need to get it from Greece to New York City. So they raised about $300,000, and again, the stars aligned. There was an ocean-going Ukrainian tugboat that was tugging a ship from Philadelphia to Greece and then coming back. So on the return leg, they just hooked up the Slater behind them and tugged it across the Med, across the Atlantic to New York City. She arrived in August of '93. The Intrepid, the aircraft carrier down there. Initially, the plan was 6 months down there just to get things settled and then find a new home. That 6 months turned into 4 years. And in '97, it was finally decided, you guys got to find a permanent home. Ultimately, it was chosen just to tug the ship up the Hudson River to Albany. So she's been here ever since 1997.
Okay, yeah, fascinating history there. Quite the journey that this ship has been on.
It's been everywhere, yes. Yep.
So with that service in Greece, was there a lot that was changed on the ship when it came back here to Albany? How much was redone to kind of get it in this configuration?
Yes. So unfortunately, the 40 years in the Greek Navy, we know basically zero about what happened. We do know when the ship was brought to Boston, prior to giving the ship to Greece, they did modernize it a little bit. They moved the sonar dome further aft and installed a bigger, better sonar dome. The 20mm Oerlikon machine guns, Slater's Oerlikon machine guns at World War II were single barreled, just one barrel. Comes back from Greece with 2 barrels. So we believe when she was given to Greece in '51, they removed the singles and added the double Oerlikons. Other than that, armament, they kept the armament. Most of the gun control equipment, same stuff. It was more the creature comforts that they modernized. So they ripped out the galley, modernized that, modified the sleeping quarters a little bit. But we've done our best to remove all that and bring it back to 1945. So locating the 1945 equipment. If we can't locate it, we will try to fabricate it if we have the blueprints. So right now she is more or less in her 1945 configuration. Some little bits here and there, but unless you know what you're looking for, it's going to be hard.
Yeah. Before we head on board the ship, I also want to note that there's a lot of work going on
Yes.
today. So talk about kind of this week and what's being done on the ship right now.
Yeah, so as we go through, you're going to see a dirty ship probably, a loud ship, and a semi-busy ship. So twice a year, we have work weeks, spring and fall. People from around the country come and live on the ship and volunteer their time. So they'll sleep on the ship, shower. We have cooks on board that will make all their meals, breakfast, lunch, dinner, snacks, nonstop coffee as well in the ship's original galley. And they just volunteer their time and they just work on projects. This started in the 1990s. The first work week was April of '95 down in New York City. And it was mainly the World War II veterans that served on these ships. As the years progressed, they would keep coming, but they would also bring their families and their friends. Now that they are passed, their family and friends continue doing that work. Or we'll just get, veterans or just people who are interested in helping out and think it's cool to come aboard and work on the ship.
Yeah.
So yeah, today is the start of our fall work week. We have about a dozen or so volunteers living on the ship and doing various projects.
That's amazing. So yeah, we'll get a look a little bit behind the scenes then of some of the work that goes on with
Yes.
maintaining a ship like this, because obviously the ship is still in the water here in Albany, and there's so many things that need kept up when you're trying to maintain a museum ship.
100%. Not only do you have to worry about everything above the water, but the main concern is everything below the water. Her hull is still in fabulous condition despite being 80 years old, and as built, only 3/8" steel. So it's thinner today. But we've done some work to modify that a little bit. So
Yeah, sounds good. Well, we can go on board
Sure.
then. And
Yeah, just watch your step as you
start
come down.
checking out more of the ship.
So this is a great opportunity to see the motor whaleboats. So many ships in World War II had these. Destroyer escorts in particular would have one on the deck above us. It would be stored. So it's 26 feet long. It's made out of wood. They continued making these after the war, but out of fiberglass. This came back with the ship from Greece in '93. It is wood, so we know it's original to World War II, and there's a good chance it's original to the Slater. However, we also gave Greece other destroyer escorts and destroyers, so it's possible it came off of one of those. It's impossible to know. We did repair a lot of the wood planking. We had to put a new engine in it, but what's great is everything works today. So we try monthly to pile a bunch of our volunteers and their staff and just go puttering up and down the Hudson River. So on Sunday, or Saturday, excuse me, we actually had 2 rides out there with our volunteers, especially for people who are new, have never been on it. It's a great little thing. There's not many World War II ships or boats that can still go out cruising. So while Slater cannot go cruising, at least we have a motor whaleboat that can.
And what would have been the main use of this boat when it was with the Slater during the war?
So primarily it's going to be a taxi to bring guys to the ship or vice versa to other ships or land. You could use it as a lifeboat. The problem is if your ship just got riddled and it's sinking, the associated equipment to raise and lower this is probably damaged or destroyed, or the boat itself, remember it's wood. So just shrapnel flying through the air is going to go through that. So most often you're just using regular life rafts. If you could put it in the water as a life raft, you could, but more often just a taxi. Captain's gig. So this is a great point. We are a National Historic Landmark, the Slater is. They built 563 of these ships in World War II, say late 1942 until late 1945. Out of those 563, there's only 5 left in the world. And of all places, we have it up here in Albany, New York, which is fabulous. Now they continued building these ships, much larger, more modern after the war, and we continued using those until about 1994 in our Navy. Some of those ships we did give away to other countries. So I believe Mexico and Turkey, for instance, are still using some of those. So they're looking about 30 or 40 years old, or if not older. But for World War II, there's only 5 left in the world. And the last one that was still in commission with the Navy in Thailand, they just decommissioned her last week. It was more of a ceremonial ship, but her engine still ran, so she was out cruising, could fire the guns.
It's incredible that it was still running at all, though.
Yes.
Yeah.
The videos of their naval exercises where they actually have it out cruising, and then you'll see one of their modern ships come by, and it looks like a lifeboat for it. It's so much smaller. But yeah, we're very fortunate and grateful to have this ship up here in Albany.
How many of those 5 are museum ships in the U.S.? Are there other ones?
So there's 2 in the U.S. So our whole marketing catchphrase is the last destroyer escort afloat in America, because we are floating. The Stuart down in Galveston, Texas, they have been in museums since the late 1970s, I believe, but they are on land. Okay. So that's why we say we're the last afloat. There's another one in Colombia, then you have Thailand, and then you have Brazil. Yeah. We'll move forward a little bit. You'll pass by the Spud Locker. Any guesses what they store in the Spud Locker?
Potatoes?
You got it, yeah. Potatoes. There would have been 2 of these on the ship. One here, and there would have been another one on the deck above us. Potatoes, root vegetables in general. But yeah, you just open up the doors, get your potatoes. There's just life jackets in there today because our motor whaleboat, we need life jackets.
And what are the decking material typically on a ship like this made out of?
Yeah, it's just straight steel, very thin steel. The hull averages out to about 3/8. The steel decking, roughly the same. And that's a big issue. When you got thin steel that's over 80 years old, you got to constantly work on it. And you can hear our needle guns going on right now. Every time you needle gun it, you are taking a little smidge of that steel away. And you got 80 years of that happening. So every once in a while we will poke a hole in the deck, or the biggest is right at the seams, the weld seams, we'll poke a hole there. It's usually not a big deal. We have guys that can fix it, but we try our best not to harm the ship when doing that work. Hi Blair, do you mind if we come in? They're shooting a little video.
Okay, well let me out here.
Okay.
How long? Got some ongoing food prep here.
Yeah, so like I said, with our work week, we have cooks that come aboard to do all the cooking for us. Blair is one of those guys. He's here for both work weeks. But this is the galley, the kitchen. It's the only one on the ship. So there would be about 200 to about 220 guys on the ship in World War II. All of their meals are prepped inside here. Now this is one of the major areas the Greeks modified. So they've ripped out a lot of the World War II equipment. So this is a modern version, late 90s, early 2000s that we acquired, but it's very similar. So they would have had a stovetop, a range, and 2 ovens exactly like this. And you just saw them put food in there, so everything works. The stainless steel is a Greek addition. Just when you're cooking, it gets dirty and greasy. It's easier to wipe down than the hard steel bulkheads, so we've kept it for that reason. Plumbing on the ship, of course, works with sinks, toilets, showers. We added a little extension to the counter space here. Steam kettles, soups, and stews are made over here. These are not original to World War II. These are post-war. We have actually never located World War II steam kettles. However, the Stuart down in Galveston still has a lot of her original equipment because she was basically brought out of mothball and turned into a museum immediately. So she retained a lot of the original equipment, but they're similar to what it would have looked like. Of course, we don't use them. This is a diesel electric ship, so all of the cooking apparatus, lights, etc., you have diesel engines powering generators, creating electricity. There would have been a small steam plant for this type of stuff. The Greeks, for whatever reason, removed that. So even if we wanted to use this, we couldn't.
So are you and the Slater team always looking to see if you can pick up like a piece of some original World War II hardware from somewhere, maybe another ship that's being scrapped or something?
Yes. So especially in the pre-2000, if the Navy was scrapping a ship, especially if it was a World War II ship, they do invite museum ships. Hey, come on down and take stuff within reason.
Yeah.
So a lot of the things on Slater today are from other World War II ships. So while it's not original to the Slater, it's going to be very similar or the exact model of equipment. So, you know, it's good to do that. Yeah, we have dozens of other ships represented on Slater, and not even just destroyer escorts. Troop transports, cruisers, destroyers, et cetera, et cetera. I forget where these came from.
It's also always interesting to hear about what the food was like on a ship like this during World War II. So what did kind of veterans who served on this have to say typically? What was the overall experience eating on the Slater?
An important thing to consider as we go through the ship, so say they're 18, 20-year-old males. They're growing up during the Great Depression. So a lot of them, they're probably growing up poor. They may not get 3 hot meals a day. So for the Navy, it's the first time for a lot of kids getting 3 hot meals a day, and they're making a little bit of money each month. Are they making enough money to just go out and blow it on everything they want? No, but they're making a decent living. The Navy's teaching them financial literacy, how to eat well, things like that. So, of course, the most famous thing is SOS. So. And then last but not least in here, you have potato peeler. So all those typical photos of guys sitting, you got a big pile of potatoes, and he's just peeling it. You have this. So you can put about 5 pounds of potatoes in there. There's a motor on the back, so plug it in. Water comes through the hose, and it'll churn itself around. And the inside is rough like sandpaper, and they'll peel themselves, basically. But if you do leave it going for too long, it will just get smaller, smaller, smaller. Now you got tater tots.
There you go.
Yeah.
What is through here?
So that is your midships passageway. The first design of these ships in World War II, if you wanted to go from one end to the other, you had to go outside, whether or not that's bad weather. Later iterations, including Slater, included a hallway down the center, so you don't have to go outside. It also gives you access, vertical ladder access to your engineering spaces as well, and a damage control locker down there. Anything else in here? You want to step out?
Yeah, we can keep going.
All right. And as you can see, nonstop coffee for the volunteers.
The most important ingredient.
Thank you, Blair. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Watch your step as you come through. This is an important thing to look at. So there's a forward piling and there's another one in the back. So we got these installed right around 2010. We received a grant to install them. Prior to installing these, at the end of each season, because the river does freeze most years, we have to get tugged down to the port of Albany to keep us out of that ice flow. We were kind of getting sick of doing that. We wanted to stay here year round, so we got grants to install these. That enables us to stay here year round, even when the river freezes. Because the worry is you got the ice pushing you into the seawall. Well, with these here, you can't. The Hudson is also tidal. You can see the river is actually pretty low right now. You can see the bottom over here. But it can get all the way to the top of that seawall.
Oh, wow.
The year after we installed these, the river flooded into the parking lot. The Slater was at the parking lot level. And if it wasn't for these, we would have been pushed right into the seawall. But it was high enough where you could just walk off this deck onto the top of this piling. The pictures are remarkable, but we're very fortunate to have those.
So do you close during the winter season, or what are the opening hours typically like if people want to come visit the ship?
Yes, so we're open usually the first Wednesday of April through the Sunday after Thanksgiving each season.
Okay.
It's just too dangerous to keep the decks safe for people in the wintertime. We do offer guided tours in the winter if you book in advance. Albany's also not a tourist destination in the winter, so it doesn't make sense for us to be open. So here you have the main armament of a cannon-class destroyer escort like Slater. So there were 6 different classes of these ships in World War II. The main difference being propulsion plants and main armament. Otherwise, everything else is nearly identical. So cannon class had to settle for the small 3-inch 50 caliber deck gun, because while we wanted the 5-inch 38s that you see on the destroyers and secondary armament on larger ships, the production of those guns was being outpaced by the production of ships. So some destroyer escorts like Slater had to settle for the outdated 3-inch 50 caliber deck gun. So maximum rate of fire, you're looking at about 12 to 15 rounds a minute, 6-mile range in perfect circumstances. Roughly a 10-man crew here, not counting the guys bringing up more ammunition. Another downside of this, while it's not as powerful and the rate of fire isn't as much as the 5-inch gun, if you need more rounds, you're gonna have 50 rounds in each of these lockers, and there'll be 4 lockers up here. But if you need more from the magazine a few decks below us, there's no hoist, no dumbwaiter. So it's just all manual labor passing it through the scuttles, through the hatches. The 5-inch guns would have the hoist built right into the mount. You're just bringing everything right up from below.
And these were primarily for submarine hunting or anti-aircraft, or a mixture? What was the goal here?
So it is dual purpose,
okay,
meaning anti-air and anti-ship or anti-surface vessel. It's not that powerful though. And that low rate of fire, it's gonna be difficult to fire at a plane that's moving a few hundred miles an hour with only 10 to 15 rounds a minute. So mainly it's anti-ship or submarine that's on the surface. It can still do some damage, but again, it's not going to be as good as the 5-inch gun, unfortunately. Plus, you also notice you're right here up on the bow. These ships are notorious, and destroyers. You're in rough seas. This part of the ship is going underwater, coming out of the water, and you're flying. So these guys are getting doused. And the Slater is primarily North Atlantic, wintertime. So the ship's orders for the Slater, generally they had this gun covered and not in service. They kept the number 2 gun above us in a semi-ready status because the water getting up there is going to be much less than down here. But behind the gun is one of your main anti-submarine weapons. So this is called your Hedgehogs. It's an anti-submarine mortar, essentially. They're going to be used if you believe the submarine is underwater in front of your ship. You can load 24 Hedgehogs on these spigots. You would pull the pins, and then you can launch it. The firing mechanism is behind the blast shield. There'll be 30 pounds of TNT, Torpex, and they would shoot off. The gun would be leveled. These guys would skedaddle and go inside. There's 10,000 pounds of back pressure coming out of every single one. It's going to be loud. It's going to be dangerous if you're standing here.
Right.
But they'd all fly through the air in an oval pattern, land in the water, start sinking. After a few feet underwater, they'll arm themselves. But what's great about them is there's a contact fuse. So this will only explode if it actually hits the submarine directly. If it misses, even just a foot away, but does not hit it, it will not explode. And you can say, well, that's bad. Well, yes, but if your sonar guys a few decks above us listening to the underwater noises, hears this explode, you can say almost for certain you hit the submarine. Whereas the depth charges that you always see in the movies, they're on the back. 300 pounds of TNT.
You got the ship's bell ringing
We
out
do.
there.
Yeah. And I was warned they raised the volume today too. So the 300-pound depth charge is in the back. You set that to, say, 100 feet underwater, it's exploding as soon as it sinks 100 feet underwater. Whether or not there is a submarine there, or maybe it's just a school of fish, or there's nothing. And because it's a larger explosion, now your sonar guys can't hear anything. And if there is a submarine and you missed him, that will give them time to either try to get away or turn around and get a firing solution on your ship. So while less explosive power in these, it's still enough to sink a submarine or damage him. Force him to the surface, and if he doesn't surrender, train all your guns on him. Or these ships were built with a reinforced bow. Tactic was to crash into the sub. And that did happen to a few of these ships.
So are there accounts of the men who served on destroyer escorts like the Slater? Did they have a preference between the different armaments like you were talking about? Was there a typical approach they preferred, or once again the bell?
Yeah.
Now here it is, best gear.
So that system is obviously all operational, which is nice.
Yeah, so
and mess cooks. Best gear.
in the Blue Jackets manual, every sailor would get the little book outlining just the basics of everything to know aboard ship. It does say all the different announcements. So many, many years ago, he's since passed away, we had a volunteer record those announcements, and then we have them on a timer and it goes through the ship. So that's saying lunch is being served soon. And you saw Blair was cooking in there, so he's getting ready to serve lunch. Yes, so depth charges, very effective. These, I believe, I'd have to double check, but they're something like 2 or 3 times more effective. But you're going to be losing them more because if you don't hit the sub, it's just landing on the ocean floor and not exploding. The USS England Destroyer Escort, the spring of 1944, she's in the Pacific. The Japanese knew we were coming to retake the Philippines and everything else. So they sent out a line of submarines as picket submarines, and they were going to be the first line of defense and intelligence for the American fleet, radio back so that the Japanese could get ready. Unfortunately for those 6 submarines, the USS England was there, and they located one by one over about a 2-week period. They sank 6 of those submarines just by using Hedgehogs.
Wow.
It got to the point where it was either after number 4 or number 5. They heard on the radio there was a group of destroyer escorts hunting the 6th submarine, but they just couldn't get the kill. And the England kind of came in, captain said on the radio, "Hey guys, we're here if you need assistance." And they actually told them, "Stay away, this is our kill." So, okay, we'll stay away. A couple hours later, they radioed the England, "All right, come on in." Their first Hedgehog launch, they got it. Unfortunately for the England, a year later, Okinawa, they got hit by a kamikaze in the superstructure and lost a bunch of guys. But I forget who said, Admiral, was it Halsey or somebody, pardon me, but he said there, because of this, there will always be a USS England in the U.S. Navy. There hasn't been in England since I think the 80s or 90s, but very effective. It does move side to side to kind of compensate for the roll of the ship as well. Then they're filled with concrete chain. They're trading rounds. Unfortunately, we're not allowed to fire any of the guns.
Just take away all the fun.
Yeah, technically, legally on paper, the guns on Slater we do not own. We had to transfer ownership to the New York State Division of Army and Navy Affairs or Military Affairs. I forget the exact name. So on paper, they own the guns. All right, head inside. We'll actually see where the officers lived. You're just going to watch your step as you come through.
Always lots of fun, tight spaces on these ships.
Oh, yeah. I was amazed. Last week I was out in Buffalo on the Sullivans.
Yeah.
And while bigger than the Slater, it felt more cramped to me. I was actually having to duck most places I went, which I was surprised about. So this is an example of the officers' sleeping quarters. You're welcome to go in there if you like. So this is currently set up for 4 officers. Originally, it would have been 2 officers, but over in the corner we have the 2 racks. That would have been a desk. At the time of restoration, we didn't have a desk to put there, so we just installed 2 racks. But what's great is we are not the USS Slater Museum. We're the Destroyer Escort Historical Museum. So we tell the stories of all destroyer escorts as best as we can using the Slater. But we also have artifacts related to other destroyer escorts, mainly their crew. So all these filing cabinets, drawers, the safe, everything is just filled mainly with books and archival material. But yeah, it's amazing just going through the ship and just pulling open a drawer and there's stuff from World War II in there.
Yeah, fascinating. Because you said there were, what, over 500 of these built?
563.
Yeah.
So unfortunately, on a small ship like this, officers have to share rooms with other officers. You also have to share a bathroom. So there's just a normal ceramic toilet and a shower. The enlisted crew are sleeping below decks, then they all have to share the same bathroom. Some of the items in here are from Slater's World War II officers. This gentleman, Cliff, so there's a copy of a photograph of Sally Rand. Do you know who Sally Rand is?
I've heard the
was?
name, yes.
She was a burlesque dancer of the era. So he met her when the ship was in Pearl Harbor in '45 at a bar or something, so she signed a photograph to him.
So have you had, over the years, have veterans come to the ship with kind of things that they served aboard on the ship, things they had while they were on the ship, that kind of thing?
Yeah, so in terms of the Slater, I've only been fortunate enough to meet one crew member, the quartermaster, Dan Drummond. Unfortunately, he passed away a couple years ago. But we get the families of the crew. So this is the executive officer. He has his own stateroom. Still has to share a bathroom ahead. But there's photographs here. That's his family. So Harold Polson, he was lieutenant, second in command of the Slater. His son and their family still come up almost on a yearly basis. He made the Navy a full career, retired as a full captain. So photographs are Polson's. And some of the items throughout here are his as well. You trying to repair a call button, George?
Install one.
Oh, okay. Is it gonna work?
Well, when I get done, but not today.
So this is the officers' wardroom. All the officers, well, most of them are sleeping up here. There is a stateroom aft for your junior officers, but they all eat their meals here, and the captain is above us. So 6 officers at a time. They eat the same food as everybody else. It's prepared in the galley, just down the hallway here. The officers' stewards would bring the food, plate it on the nice china, if the seas allow them to eat off the nice china. If it doesn't, in the hallway there's a wooden boards called fiddle boards with holes cut out, and you can place your china in those cutouts. Recreation space, listen to music, write letters home. We usually have 1940s music playing through the speaker over there. Write letters home, read books, play cards. Of course, no gambling with any money. It's not allowed. Planning. So before every convoy, whatever ship is designated as the convoy flagship, either for the merchant ships or for the escort ships, you have to go and plan the trip. So this is one of the larger tables on the ship, so you can lay out your charts, your maps. Last but not least, surgery. So surgical lights above the table. Now there is a sick bay on Slater. The issue is it's all the way aft, you have to go down a ladder, and it's only large enough to work on one patient at a time. So if you go into battle, you just lost a bunch of guys, you're not going to be able to do it back there. So they would create areas for triage on the main deck, one here and one in the crew's washroom in the back, where you could do surgeries.
Yeah.
So you would have an autoclave to steam sanitize scalpels and syringes, etc., and you would get to work. Now, especially early on in the war, the smaller ships like destroyer escorts, doctors and surgeons are in short supply. So they need to be on the larger ships, battleships, cruisers, aircraft carriers. So generally you have pharmacist mates, similar to like a paramedic EMT. Job is to give you medicine when you're not feeling well in the morning, put a Band-Aid on a cut, kiss it, make it feel better, that type of thing. Not necessarily trained in world-class surgery. If he has to do it, it means you living or dying, he'll do it. But ideally, patch you up until they get a doctor to your ship or get you off the ship. Now, fortunately, they never had to do any of that on Slater. Now, the 40 years in Greece, who knows? Now, you get all that chaos going on. This room was smaller in World War II. So just behind where George is, there would have been another bulkhead with a door. That side of the room would have been another stateroom for 2 officers to live. The Greeks made this one large room. We kept it that way just to help with tours come in and out. Mm-hmm. But what's great is the Stewart down in Galveston, they still have their stateroom over there. So it's a great reference.
And then there's kind of is that a medical display there? Some of the
we just put that
on board.
Yeah, we just put that. They would have just had small medical boxes in compartments, but just your typical surgical stuff, gauze, morphine. You could use alcohol, pure, of course, medicinal. They would have that locked up in a safe here and down in sickbay.
So you've mentioned a few times with the difficulty of kind of rough seas that the ship would encounter. Are there any particularly like infamous storms that the Slater went through or accounts from sailors?
Yeah, so what's great is we do have Slater's full deck log. We were able to acquire copies from the National Archives. And it's on our website. You can look at day by day what the ship is doing. You kind of have to do your own detective work to figure out where they are. So we don't have the war diary. We've never located the war diary. The war diary generally says the same stuff as the deck log, but it will also include longitude, latitude. Deck log doesn't usually do that. But in one instance in the deck log, it does say they were going through a storm. I just can't remember if it was Pacific or Atlantic. They were doing 55-degree rolls.
Wow.
The most we know about for a destroyer escort in World War II, without capsizing, and it's in their action reports, they were doing 78 degrees. At that point, it's easier to walk on the bulkheads than it would be on the deck. Yeah. Unfortunately, that was in the Pacific. They were going through a typhoon, and unfortunately, they did have officers and crew washed overboard. Some were rescued, some weren't. But yeah, Slater was definitely doing some heavy rolls in storms. To the point where one Thanksgiving, there was a storm. They forgot to latch those oven doors of the galley, and their Thanksgiving turkey slid across the deck.
Oh, wow.
I'm sure they still ate it, but yeah.
5-second rule.
5-second rule? All that dirt on it is just extra spice, right?
And
Extra
what did you
flavor.
say is being worked on here now under the table?
So George is one of our volunteer electricians. He comes up a bunch, especially for their work weeks each year. And so under these tables, there would be call buttons that the captain or other officers could push to summon the steward for, whatever. Yeah, there's the button right there. What's great about this is because you can only tour Slater with a tour guide, that allows us flexibility to keep everything wide open. So we don't have to hide the silver or the china or block off, various rooms with plexiglass or whatever. So theft is not a horrible thing with us. But having those call buttons working or the guns trainable allows the kids to get on it, or the parents. The parents usually love it more than the kids. But just that hands-on. It forms a memory, forms a connection with the ship, which we really want. So just add in this little call button. Most people won't even see it, but if we can point it out to them and it works, it just makes it a little more special.
Something more interactive. For
Exactly.
Sure. Yeah.
Yep. At the very least, it distracts the kids that are not interested in you talking about World War II history, which is good. And then sometimes you would have a library, so there's manuals if you're trying to advance in rate from, say, 3rd to 2nd or 1st or to chief. You got manuals that you could use to study. On many destroyer escorts, sometimes the library would be further aft. There's a better place for it, but we put it here. And then most destroyers and destroyer escorts of World War II and today are named for sailors, Marines, Coast Guardsmen killed in combat. They do something heroic. There's some exceptions to that rule, but mainly that's it. So Frank Slater is the namesake of the Slater. He was 21 years old, a month shy of his 22nd birthday. He joined the Navy in February of 1942, graduates Navy boot camp, and is assigned to the San Francisco heavy cruiser. He's a seaman second class. He's an anti-aircraft gunner on a 20-millimeter Oerlikon. Fast forward to November 12, 1942. The ship is just off the Guadalcanal in the Pacific, and they receive intelligence that there's roughly 30 torpedo bombers heading their way, and they're about an hour out. So they sent the fleet out to deeper water, got ready, sure enough. Hour later, about 30 torpedo bombers start attacking. The San Francisco, being a heavy cruiser, one step under a battleship, it's huge. You want to sink it. So they did have to dodge torpedoes. Fortunately, no torpedoes hit them. His job, shoot down those planes once they got in range, and he did. Unfortunately, the wreckage of one that he was firing at was already too close. It kept tumbling through the air and crashed directly into his station, and then tumbled over the side of the ship into the water. It wiped out the crew there, about 10 guys, but according to an officer that survived the attack, they were firing all the way up until the end. They didn't try to abandon their station. So he was awarded Navy Cross, of course the Purple Heart. And when the Slater was being built, or the future Slater was being built, the Navy consulted a list of possible names, chose Frank Slater, reached out to his family. They were sharecroppers in rural northeastern Alabama, Fife, Alabama area. No money whatsoever. He's one of 12 kids in the family. So they reach out to the family, say, hey, we're building a ship, and we're going to name it after your son Frank. And then February of 1944, when the ship was being ready to be launched, the family traveled to Alabama, to Tampa. His mom was the sponsor, with the champagne breaking on the bow. Christened it USS Slater. The ship slid down the ways and into the water just off of Tampa. His younger brother, Elam Slater, he graduated Navy boot camp in May of 1944. Just as the Slater was being commissioned, he needed a ship, so the Navy actually signed him to the ship named after his brother. He was on for almost 2 years. He was a 40-millimeter gunner's mate. Now, all of his siblings have since passed away, but they all had families of their own. So every once in a while, they'll peek in, say hi. Last year was the 80th birthday for the ship, so we had a 1940s themed dance party. But almost 40 members of his family came. Some had never seen the ship. Some hadn't seen each other since the 90s. So it was a lot of fun.
That's amazing.
Yep.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that it just speaks to the power of like a museum ship like this. Obviously, you're preserving the ship itself, but then just kind of the way that it can bring people together and share their stories like that, I think is really remarkable.
100%. They follow us on all of our social media channels, so they're commenting all the time on our posts, thanking us for all the work we're doing. And they're just wonderful people as well.
What does this photo depict over here?
So that is Green Cove Springs, Florida. So that is the area Slater was in from roughly 1947 until 1950. So there were hundreds of ships of various types, but many destroyer escorts just sitting there, some for decades. And we had these fleets everywhere. Green Cove Springs, Florida, Washington State, Philly, New York, etc. Now, we don't really have them, at least the World War II ships. They're all gone by now. So, yeah. And then we have silver in China. There's a photograph of the Slater officers and crew over there. They built one of these ships in 23 days. I would not want to be on that ship. A shipyard that really knew what they were doing in World War II were doing about 3 months to build this ship. There's one yard, I believe it was in Orange, Texas, or maybe it was Brown Shipbuilding. They were doing one destroyer escort launch every single week, plus everything else.
That's incredible.
It's amazing, American shipbuilding in World War II. And they're having to design all this stuff by hand. You don't have the fancy computers we have nowadays. So it's amazing the amount of work that went into the war economy back then. And then it's also the little things on the Slater. The fans work. They don't help you when it's 90 degrees in here, but they work. The clocks, they're hand wound, just like World War II. So once a week we have a retired Navy quartermaster. He's a tour guide. He was actually the decommissioning quartermaster for the Joseph P. Kennedy Jr. That's a museum in Fall River right now. But every Thursday he comes in, the first thing he does, he walks the entire ship and just hand winds every single clock. And he loves doing it. Little pantry for the officers. You can see we're still using it as a pantry. Then a couple before and after photographs here. So there's Slater coming back to New York City in '93. An absolute rust bucket. I'll show you a better picture later on, but because the Greeks were going to scrap this ship, they had no reason to take care of it the last few years of her service. So it just rusted out. We have a quick condition summary. The insurance company required, before the ship coming to New York City, the Greeks had to take it out of the water and do a dry dock. Don't do any work, but just give us a report of the condition. So the hull was in horrible condition. Portholes were missing, so there's water coming inside the ship and just rusting it out. There's literal piles of trash inside the ship, not to mention all the rust you see. So it's a never-ending battle against rust, even over 30 years later. But then you see what she looks like today. That's coming to Albany in '97 for the first time. Before and after of the Hedgehog projectile we just saw, Combat Information Center, which is 2 decks above us, depth charge roller rack on the back. We did have to actually rebuild one from scratch. Fortunately, we had the blueprints. But it's been a labor of love, but it's been a lot of work.
Where has the funding primarily come from over the years to maintain the ship?
Visitors,
Okay.
private donors. Yeah, so we're a nonprofit, so no government funding apart from the occasional grant, but that's rare. So ticket sales, gift shop sales, donations, memberships, etc. All that goes right back into the ship. Buying all the paint or new wiring for all of our volunteers doing the work like George is right now. So yeah, we don't have high budgets like other museums or other museum ships. We make enough to do what we need to do. Mm-hmm. All right, so we'll head down here. Just be careful, however you're comfortable going up and down the ladders. So here you have the crew's mess deck. So the non-officers, this is where they're eating. It's set up for roughly 50 sailors. There is overflow seating in the next compartment as well. But they're gonna form a line up the ladder, come on down, grab your stainless steel mess trays. We actually grabbed these from the Des Moines, the cruiser that was being scrapped, I believe it was early 2000s, late 90s. Navy invited us down, hey, come take stuff. And in her hold, were hundreds, if not thousands, of these mess trays. So we grabbed them. We have a bunch down in storage still. The helmets that you see outside are from the Des Moines as well.
I also noticed in the gift shop you sell the mess trays
Yeah.
in the gift shop too, which I thought was very funny.
Yeah, you can buy these mess trays. They're a dime a dozen. Yeah, they're everywhere online, so we don't need them. So when we get extra mess trays, yeah, we'll sell them just for fundraising.
Yeah, yeah.
So they'll come down, get your mess tray. Food is prepared and then stored in the steam table. What's great is, like I mentioned earlier, the Greeks removed a lot of the World War II equipment. They also removed the World War II steam table for whatever reason, who knows. They put their version in, and that's what we kept up until 2 years ago. We had the blueprints for the steam table from World War II for a Cannon-class destroyer escort. So we ripped out the Greek one and fabricated this from scratch. A couple of our volunteers. One of our volunteers does some teaching at a local college, and they had their students help with it.
Yeah.
So it was a great learning experience. So it got to the point where they actually located the original weld scars on the deck. We were able to line everything up perfectly. So this is how it looked like in World War II. Your coffee was brewed in the little steam kettle right there. But you get your food, sit down at the tables, have a relatively good meal, hang out with your buddies, get a break, and then they'll get the next group of guys in, so on and so forth. So it's a nonstop flurry of activity in here. This will also be the cruise recreation space. It's the largest space where they can kind of just hang out. So they did have a phonograph down here. We don't have one right now, but they can listen to some music, play cards, no gambling, remember, or just hang out with their friends. Now it's going to be loud. You could probably hear, I believe that's one of our generators going right now, just for our power tools. But the forward engine room is on the other side of that bulkhead. So you're going to hear those engines roaring. The ship will be rattling. Everyone hanging out, having a good time, so that's going to be loud as well. You got the smells. Hopefully the food smells good. But there's also a diesel-powered ship. So your diesel tanks up here are right below our feet. So those yellow covers are 2 diesel tanks. So there will be about almost 80,000 gallons of diesel on the ship. Enough to go over 10,000 nautical miles.
Now I noticed you've got the bunks here, but there's a hammock hanging right there.
Yes.
So was that a common practice?
Yes and no. So by mid-late war's end, they had figured it out enough. There's enough racks here for every sailor. There's no hot racking. You don't have to share the racks. Then you have your own footlocker as well. So all the hammocks are going to go in stowage. You don't need them. But say a ship in your convoy is torpedoed and sinks. Now there's 50 guys in the water. You rescue them. Maybe you'll let them sleep in the hammocks or sleep in your bed, and then you go in the hammock or whatever you need to do. So you could break them out for that. You sink a German submarine that's on the surface, and now there's 40 Germans in the water. You are legally required to now rescue them. If you don't, it's a war crime. The Buckley, World War II destroyer escorts, they located U-66 on the surface, and instead of just shooting at it, which they did, they rammed it. However, they got stuck on top of the sub, so nobody could move. The Germans climbed out and then over the rails to that 3-inch gun on their ship, hand-to-hand combat. So
Wow.
just using helmets, empty shell casings, hammers, whatever you got. It got to the point where the Germans actually made their way into the officers' country we were just in, and there was a steward's mate. He turned around, and there's a German there. So he flung coffee in his face, coffee mug, everything. The sub sank, and they took, I want to say 30 or 35 Germans prisoner, and they had to march them down their ladder to their mess deck, and they just kept them here under armed guard. So you could put them in hammocks as well if you need to. There's no brig on the ship. It's just too small. Could you lock them in a hold somewhere below us? Sure, but that's not ideal. There's no prison cells.
How many men serve typically on a destroyer escort?
In wartime, you're looking at about 200 to 220. Peacetime, 150 to 180, give or take. They did convert some of these ships into troop transports for the Pacific mainly. So they would modify it, take off a lot of the armament on the O1 deck, and actually add 4 landing craft. And then they would have 100 soldiers or 100 Marines on the ship. So now you need to add berthing and mess compartments for them as well. So you could fit a lot on a small ship like this. It's amazing. So this is forward berthing. There's 4 berthing compartments for the enlisted crew. 1 here, 3 in the back. So 33 guys in here. What's great is what we've done is the names you see stenciled on life jackets are the names of the crew. The names you see stenciled on the straps on the pillows and blankets are volunteers who have worked on the ship who have passed away. So as a little memorial, we stencil their names.
Have you ever stayed overnight on one of the bunks here, or people who have? How comfortable of an experience?
I stay in officers' country, which is a little more comfortable, but not too much. But yeah, we have some of the volunteers staying in here. So you can see they're set up. They'll bring their own sleeping bags and whatever they need to stay comfortable. But this is your chief petty officers compartment. So they're mess and sleeping quarters. So it's very similar to how it would have looked in World War II. They would not have had a refrigerator here. This would have been like the little coffee kitchenette type area. They also wouldn't have had a microwave. They probably had a pinup calendar. But this doubles for our volunteers like a little break area, especially in the wintertime. We can turn the heat on over here in the corner, shut the door, coffee brewing, have their coffee, have their lunch, breakfast, all that good stuff in here. And we'll head forward a little bit more. You get an example of a magazine a little bit. So the ship came back from Greece with hundreds of these training 3-inch rounds. Now this was not a 3-inch magazine in World War II. However, the only place we can really show off a 3-inch magazine is right here. Otherwise it's below chiefs and you just can't see it. So this past winter we restored this compartment and made it into a 3-inch magazine. In World War II it would have been used as a Hedgehog projectile magazine. So just imagine the Hedgehog launcher is right above us. So you go down there, you grab 40, 50-pound Hedgehog, pass it to the guy here, or they could have a block and tackle or a chain fall. You then have to bring it up that ladder, outside, and then reload it. So a bunch of guys having to do all this work. Sewing area, most ships have a little sewing space. Destroyer escorts, generally this was in the back of the ship. We just moved it up here just for ease of access. It's a 1930, it's either 1936 or 1938, I believe, Singer sewing machine. We have a retired parachute rigger that does a lot of our sewing for us. So he just runs it on all this, and you have all of his material. So this is the crew's head. So the guy's sleeping up here. This is what they have to use. It's just...
May I have your attention? May I have your attention? Lunch is being served out of the mess galley.
Got the lunch announcement again.
Oop.
Inform passageway. Inform passageway. That is all.
I don't know what they're having. So seawater would come in one end. You sit on it with your buddies. No privacy. And would flush everything out the other end. There is a modern toilet to the left. So these volunteers that are living up here for the work week can use this. We do have overnights, usually like Boy Scouts, Girl Scouts, that type of thing. And they'll sleep in those berthing areas. And then they can also use the restroom. The chief petty officers would have had their own head right here. We made a decision many years ago. We gutted it and made it into a sandblasting room. We wish we could undo that, but yeah. We need the sandblasting room.
Yeah.
And this is your anchor windlass. We still have both anchors. They're 1.5 tons each. They're hanging off the side of the ship above us. But to raise and lower your anchor, you have this motor to do all the work for you. Everything still works. We can still raise and lower the anchor. It's also a requirement anytime we go to dry dock. We need to be able to use it just in case. Coast Guard requires that. But otherwise we get tugged, so they can stop us if needed. Also just general bosun stores. You have more storage below us. And then the most forward room you can go in is right here. Just a little bit more storage. And then up that ladder into that darkness, that void, that's your peak tank. So there's nothing up there, just void space. It's empty. And that's the very pointy end of the ship, the bow. Some ships, especially late in the war in the Pacific, as like a reward, a morale boost, the Navy would give ships crates of beer. But you're not allowed to drink on the ship. So they would have to keep it in stowage. And then if they get some time, they'll go to some Pacific island, have a picnic for the crew. There was a destroyer escort, I'm blanking on the name. The Navy gave them crates of beer for future consumption, but it kept going missing. The crews kept drinking it. So the captain put it up into the peak tank, thinking, it's just a pain in the butt having to climb down there. There's no lights or anything. Kept disappearing. So he had to put armed guards up here just to guard the beer. And then because there's no armor on the ship, especially up there, there was another destroyer escort in the Pacific. They were attacked by a torpedo bomber. Fortunately, the pilot released the torpedo too late, so it didn't have time to arm. And it went right through the hull, out the other side without exploding. The crew on the destroyer escort did not even know they got hit until somebody came walking up here and there's water pooling on the deck. They climb up the ladder, look at the peak tank, and they can see daylight. And They actually located the propeller of that torpedo was just sitting there on the deck. The Navy now has it in their museum. But they were escorting the Pennsylvania, I believe, the battleship. So officers went aboard the Pennsylvania to get some damage control gear, and the crew on the Pennsylvania showered them in ice cream and everything. From their vantage point, it looked like the destroyer escort had turned into the torpedo to take the hit instead of it hitting the battleship. Meanwhile, the crew on the destroyer escort, we didn't even know there was a torpedo in the water in the first place. They didn't say anything, just so they get all the ice cream. But yeah, so there are advantages to not having armor on a ship. If there's no armor, a lot of times the warheads or the shells will go right through without puncturing.
Was there a lot of back and forth between the various ships in these groups? You mentioned earlier about how doctors tended to be on the bigger ships just because they were limited amounts. So would they exchange crew members and things? And was there much back and forth?
Oh yeah. So highline transfers of crew. Now every division of destroyer escorts would have at least one medical officer. Fortunately for Slater's division, he was on Slater. But that also meant if he was needed on another destroyer escort, he had to be transferred to that ship. So we have a picture of him. His name was Arthur Watts, Lieutenant Watts. He had to be transferred to the Kirkpatrick, DE 319 or 318. And so we have pictures, a series of photographs of him hovering over the ocean, just being pulled to the other ship. And you can't stop. So I can send you the pictures if you want. But it's great. But yeah, they're always sending guys to other ships. or coming along ships to transfer mail, batteries. Your radio is broke. Well, we have a spare radio. We'll give you a radio. You know, whatever you need. Yeah.
It's interesting looking around here in these two rooms, the amount of rope and things that look like it would have been on like an old sailing ship almost. So that how that, even with all the advances in technology.
Yeah, even today, we get a lot of active duty or recently retired Navy personnel, and they'll be walking through the ship and they will make that comment of, oh, I didn't realize you had that in World War II. We still use that. Or we use just a slightly more modern version. If it's not broken, don't fix
Right.
it. Yeah. So yeah, you always need line for stuff. You always need shackles and pulleys and block and tackles. So yeah. But a lot of this stuff just gets donated to us over the years. Companies will, be closing down or getting rid of overstock or whatever, and they will know about us through whatever channel, and they'll reach out and say, hey, we have, a few hundred pounds of line. Do you want it? Yeah. This stuff is expensive. We get it for free. Plus, the museum world is also the only world where it's okay to be a hoarder.
There you go. Your job is to hold on to stuff.
Exactly. So yeah. So the holds and former magazines below our feet are still just full of stuff. Will we ever use some of the stuff? No. But you don't want to say no because it could be one of a kind.
With the different classes of destroyer escorts, where does the Slater fall in kind of that technological kind of evolution during the war?
Sure. So they were all built more or less the same time. It's just they were experimenting with different designs. So the first was the Everett class, diesel, had 3-inch guns, so very similar to the Slater. Then they had the Buckley. Now you're getting into, they're starting to experiment with the steam or turbo electric. Then you have cannon class, which Slater is. But the Buckley is the hull design of the Buckley. All destroyer escorts after that were built on that type of hull. It was slightly longer than the first Everett's class. Cannon class, then you had Edsel, so the Stewart down in Galveston, she's an Edsel class. Rudderell, and then John C. Butler. So some ships are diesel, some are steam. Steam ships are going to be faster than diesel, but now you're dealing with high pressure, high temperature steam. You take a torpedo hit underwater in your boiler room, good luck. You take a torpedo hit in your engine room with your diesel engines, it's not going to be a few hundred degrees all of a sudden. You're probably going to be messed up, depending on where you are, but you have a higher chance of survival. Downside is you're just slower. Diesel ships generally could go much farther range as well. So 10,000 mile range on a diesel ship like Slater. Your steam-powered ship, I believe you're closer to about 6,000, 5,000 miles. So there's pros and cons to everything. But a lot of the interior spaces like this would be very similar. Some destroyer escorts, like the John C. Butler, while they still had their mess deck here, they only had one doorway right here. That doorway was not there. They just had a wall. So they still have the steam table, but where those 3 racks are, they would have had just shelving for your pots and pans. Their scullery, where you would steam clean everything, they had that roughly, I think, here. And then they had their tables, a different design. And then they had most of their officers sleeping in here in staterooms instead of above us. So they still kind of move things around, but the bare bones of all destroyer escorts in World War II were roughly the same. If you need a drink, it is operational. It does not come from the Hudson River. We always get that question. But
We'll try some authentic destroyer escort water.
he just drops dead on the deck.
It's actually very cold. That's great.
Yeah. What? Oh no, I'm doing this. Yeah, so you see lunchtime, they're making all their food. I don't know, what'd you make today, Blair?
Don't even just go get some.
It must be good if Tim's
Sausage,
eating.
Sauerkraut.
Yeah, just grab a plate.
Thank you. This is our first meal on board a ship, so that's a different experience.
Would you like a plate?
Do you ever do experiences where you try to make the same meals that they were making on the ship during the war?
Actually, about a month ago, one of our volunteers made ham-wrapped bananas in a cheese sauce. It's in the Navy cookbook.
Okay.
Right up
It's
here.
actually quite unfortunate sounding.
It wasn't bad. Everything was cooked. So you didn't actually taste the bananas. You tasted the cheese, and it had mustard mixed into it.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'd try it.
It was actually very well. If needed, I would have it again. Oh, I'm gonna get criticized for
Got
ketchup and
the
mustard.
kielbasa here on a hot dog bun, a little bit of potato salad, some sauerkraut. Fantastic.
So this is radio. And there's Steve again.
I'm a radio guy.
So Radio Central, this is all you get on Destroyer Escort, this small room. Steve, what would you say, 50%? 75% of the stuff in here still works?
Almost everything works now at this point.
Really? Okay.
Almost everything works, yeah.
in this row works. This, of course, is fully functional. This is my next target, this thing.
Okay.
I actually located some missing parts we need from some people I know have this stuff. That particular radio right there, that's a ship-to-ship radio. It's only about, it puts out almost as much power as a kid's little CB walkie-talkie, about 2 watts. That's it. Big thing like that. That will never work because it doesn't transmit anywhere anybody uses. Those frequencies aren't even used anymore.
So basically what's happening in here is right here. So this photograph, so there's going to be a sailor, radioman, sitting at these typewriters with the headphones on. We have some headphones hanging up over there, listening to this Morse code. And his entire job is just listen. And it's coming through 24 hours a day, just messages for everybody. He's listening for NZYF, ship's call sign, like the ship's phone number. The message that then follows is for the Slater. So he'll type it out on the typewriter over there. The problem is, if you look at it, everything has to be encrypted in code. So just a bunch of random letters and numbers. So you don't know what that says. But once he's done, he'll take the paper. This is your decoding room. Door shut because it's top secret. Communications officer inside or assistant communications officer. Hand the message to him. He's then going to open up the safe to the left that has that typewriter looking machine. That's your ECM, electronic cipher machine. That is how you decrypt and encrypt our messages in World War II. So he'll open up a book to today's date, and today is October 7th. So October 7th, 1945. It'll tell him the rotors in the ECM need to be in a certain configuration for that date, which means it changes every single day. He'll do that. He'll put a test message through, make sure everything is A-OK, and then he'll type out that radio message, and it will then tell him what it says. Because of that machine right there, the Allied code never really broken. Whereas you always hear about the German Enigma,
Yeah.
broken very early. The Japanese code, I believe we broke in like 1942 early on. This was never broken. So most ships would have, and Slater included, have that machine in that exact safe in the decoding room right there. 25 years ago, the USS Gage attack transport was being scrapped. So we went down there. A lot of the stuff on Slater is from the Gage. And Tim Rizzuto, our director, who you met earlier, found that safe on the Gage. He knew what the safe was for. He knew Slater had it, but there was no machine for it. He took the safe anyways. So for about 22 years, I sat down in the officer's wardroom in a corner, just as like a table. And then a couple years ago, we had a visitor come on board, and we were lucky. We opened up the radio room, Radio Central, excuse me. He came in here, and he saw everything, and he saw the safe down below. And he's like, oh, I have a buddy who works for the National Cryptological Museum in DC. I bet they have a couple in storage. So he reached out, and we were like, okay, whatever. About a week later, they emailed us, said, yeah, we got like 2 or 3 of these in storage. You want one on loan? So for the past few years, that's been on loan to us. So it's wonderful. We're the only museum ship. No, I think there's one. I think North Carolina has one. At least they had it when I visited a few years ago. That has an ECM. The COD in Cleveland has one as well, but it's a movie prop. A movie company made it. It looks identical, so we're very fortunate.
So these messages that we're hearing through the speaker here, the Morse code, those would be going out to a bunch of ships all at once, and he's just listening for the message specific to the Slater.
Yeah, essentially, if you need to send a message to the ship, you send it to a land-based station. They'll assign it a level of urgency, and if it's nothing important, it's going to not be very urgent, and it will just go on what's called the Foxer schedule, I believe it's called, and it just goes out to all of the fleet. So you're listening for that NZYF. It's more complicated than that, but on the basic level.
Yeah.
Now, if it's a very urgent message, it's going out immediately. But yeah, that's why 24/7, there's guys sitting here just listening to Morse code all day, every day. I don't know how they didn't go crazy or mad, or maybe they did.
I've had I have the lucky happenstance of having 3 veterans on other DEs who did that same job. The last guy was from Buffalo,
Oh,
Tonawanda, Joseph Buka. He was 104 at the time.
wow.
Well, we put on all 3 of these fellows, same thing happened. We play like the current amateur radio portion of the CW man. They'll sit there for 5 or 10 minutes doing this, like, oh. All comes back to their head and they all start writing it down.
It's all still in there.
It's still in the system. He sat with, on his DE, this was his spot. Yeah, that was my spot. Not this one, but. So I've had the lucky happenstance of having 3 guys like that come here. They were all the people who sat in these chairs that just, what he just said, did all day long.
We do participate in that Museum Ships Radio Weekend. Started, I think, by the New Jersey radio crew. I think it's the first weekend of June every year. Museum ships or other historical places, if they have a working radio room or can bring modern radios in, just try to talk to each other that weekend. And if you make contact, then send them all your paraphernalia and stuff. Was it this year or last year? We had the son and grandson of a Slater crew member come up, and they were amateur ham operators. So for the entire weekend, they just sat over here trying to make contact, sending Morse code in their dad's ship.
That's
So,
cool.
yeah, it was a lot of fun.
So how reliable was a lot of this equipment typically during the war? Was this considered, did it work reliably, or was it something that needed a lot of upkeep? Or
At the end of the day, it all depends on atmospheric conditions, right, Steve?
Depends on what, like this would have been running almost 24/7. The way we run it, it'll last for another 100 years. I mean, same thing with all the receivers and the tubes we can still get a hold of. Some tubes for this one are a little more rare to get a hold of.
harder to find parts for some of it?
Bingo. People think tubes apart. Original parts, like this receiver, they would have had 2 of these on this ship, not this on the same ones. We think that one is an original to the ship. Not 100% sure, but there's a good reason. Like, when I took this home, repaired the potentiometer behind this, I could have put a modern equivalent, but when you want to keep the restoration as authentic as possible, it took me about a year to find the part. I go to one of these ham radio swap meets, what do we see on somebody's table? Oh yeah, that part. How much you want for it? $10. I said, I'm going to give you $20 for it. So I grabbed it and put it in and then brought it back on. But they would have, usually they had most of these radios on a specific frequency. They had someone that would scan around, but they would listen to certain frequencies or channels. Before the war, he said, oh, that's for us now. They said, oh, you hear a call, so then they start typing it and the whole process. Like he explained it.
Yep.
That picture right there, that's Joe Breyer.
Former volunteer, isn't he?
He's
Joe Breyer?
99 now.
Is he?
Yeah, he's still around.
Oh, okay.
Not in great health, unfortunately, but yeah, that's Joe Breyer when he was 17.
Wow.
1947.
He looks thrilled. Look at that expression on his face. He looks so happy to be there.
Concentrating.
This is
He's
a dream come
concentrating.
true.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's one of our original, that was one of the original volunteer crew when I first came up here. And there's another one left over, he's over in Compound Averill Park near here. He's almost 100 too. So,
Very
close
neat.
to
Thank
it.
you.
Yeah, you're very welcome.
So since, especially that machine, all your associated documents and code books, everything is very top secret. So your ship gets hit, it's sinking, captain says abandoned ship. All your buddies are going to their life rafts, getting their life jackets. You're stationed in here. You need to destroy as much as you can. So you have a fire axe. There are examples of guys opening up the small arms magazine locker, getting a Thompson machine gun and just shooting things. Or grab your code books, documents, the rotors at the very least for that machine, if not the entire machine. Throw it in this weighted canvas bag. See there's holes cut out so water can flow in. There's weights in the bag. Chuck it over the side and immediately sink. Since this ship doesn't have any armor, a lot of times when they were torpedoed, if they were torpedoed amidships, they'd break in 2. But if you still have all your watertight doors shut, sections of the ship might stay afloat. And then you got to come back later on and sink it yourself. But if you didn't do all this, and you don't come back in time, but the Germans come back, now they get your code books. They get all your sensitive information, your radio messages. So you need to put the needs of the ship and the Navy ahead of your own survivability in some instances. So you got to make sure everything gets destroyed.
How many destroyer escort ships were lost during the war?
So we gave just shy of 100 of these to England. They lost 14 or 15 in combat. We lost, I believe it was 12 or 13. We do count the Solar. That was lost after the war in April of 46. So they're coming back, war's over for the crew. They go to New Jersey. They have to unload all their ammunition before you can go into New York City. So Slater had to go to New Jersey a bunch. They're unloading the Hedgehog magazine in the front. Something happens. They think one of the projectiles was dropped. It did not explode immediately, but started smoldering. So the crew, rightfully so, got out of there. A few minutes later, a fire broke out and then a chain reaction of explosions. The forward half of the ship, the Destroyer Escort Solar, from the bow, almost, basically just outside this door, folded backwards.
Wow.
Like a sandwich. The photographs, you can find them online, remarkable. Unfortunately, a couple guys were killed. But I forget what your original question was.
No, I was just wondering how many sank, but really a very small number given the total number that were
Comparatively,
built.
yes. Yeah, compared to being built, yes. Still, it's going to be a few thousand sailors that were unfortunately lost. Mm-hmm. But that's not also counting the dozens and dozens that were damaged in combat or determined to be economically unviable to be fixed. There were some that were torpedoed, did not sink. They'd repair them just to keep it afloat, but their engine plant, their generators were still good. So they would bring them to the Philippines or the France, and they would just hook up cables from their generators to the city's power structure, and then now power all the lights for the city. So they kept doing that for years. I think some were doing that until the 1950s. So this is the ship's office. So personnel files would have been housed in here. There would have been 3 yeomen clerks in here. There would have been a safe with all the cash. You're paid once a month. They do all that down in the mess deck just because that's where all the room is. Low end, straight out of boot camp, no real training yet. $60 a month, it's nothing. But as soon as you start advancing in the rates, get more and more time under your belt, you get to the point where you're making a decent chunk of change. And then if you make it a career, you're going to make some good money. Most guys would automatically have portions of their check allocated to go into a savings account or sent home to their families. Or pocket it. Next time you're in Boston or New York or Italy or something, you get some liberty, go party, blow all your money. Yeah.
There you go.
And then most ships have stores as well. You could buy things. So this is the captain's stateroom. Marcel Blanc, that's him in the corner there. He was lieutenant commander. He was in his early 30s when he took over this ship, but he had been out to sea in the merchant navy since he was 15. So actually in the early 1930s, he received a commendation from the Japanese government. His ship, a cargo ship of some sort, they were off the coast of China somewhere, and a Japanese pilot crash landed at sea. I think he got lost or something, and the crew rescued him. And then the government gave him a commendation. A few years later, he kind of saw the writing on the wall, so he joins the Navy. He's made, I believe it was an ensign, because he already had experience. Worked his way up. His promotions kept getting delayed because he had dental issues, but then he kept getting that waived. Eventually made lieutenant commander, and he's running Navy tugboats, I believe in Louisiana, but don't quote me on that. But he didn't like it. He wanted a warship. So he sent messages to the Bureau personnel saying, hey, I have all these years of experience. Give me a submarine chaser so I can patrol the East Coast for German subs. They kept ignoring him. He kept sending messages. We have copies of his messages. Finally, they relented, and they transferred him to a destroyer escort that was about to be commissioned. As soon as he got there, they changed his orders, said, oh, actually, head south to Tampa. There's a destroyer escort that needs a commanding officer, the Slater. So, he was the ship's only wartime commanding officer. He left in early November of 45. They were in Japan, and he was then discharged from the Navy in December. He made full commander. He went back to sea, running tugboats out of New Orleans through the Vietnam War into the 1980s. So His entire life, he was a sailor. And then his wife and daughter. His daughter is still alive. She's in her late 80s, I believe. But she always told us he would not eat food without hot sauce. So there's Tabasco down on the wardroom table for him as well.
Is the Louisiana side coming out?
Probably, yeah. He is the only guy on the ship that has his own stateroom and his own personal bathroom through that door. Everybody else has to share. All right, we're going to head up the slider. As you go up, you're going to want to duck, otherwise you're going to hit your head there.
Thank you.
We got a bad switch here. There we go.
Is a lot of this wiring original from the war, or has this been redone at all?
Yeah, a lot of this is original. We've also redone a lot of it.
Okay.
A lot of this wiring doesn't even work anymore.
Yeah.
You can see we're doing some work right now. So this is Combat Information Center, CIC. It's the brains of the ship. So the radar that's up on the mast, all of it feeds into here. So you have air search radar to track aircraft. So it's called the SA radar. Then you have the SL to track ships or other surface vessels. Want to guess how many people are in here? With the door shut?
6.
Almost double, 11.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
So you can have guys over there in the back.
Yeah.
Generally on a destroyer escort, the executive officer, who's second in command, this is his battle station. It would vary, but for the most part, that was it. One of the many weapons that won the war, especially in the Atlantic. This is HFDUF, High Frequency Direction Finder. So the German U-boats, I relate them to like high school girls gossiping, because they were required to send messages all the time, back to France, to Europe. So they'd be on the surface, send out some quick bursts, weather reports, contact, whatever. So they knew we couldn't really triangulate their position. So this technology to intercept the frequency of those messages had been a thing since like the 1800s, late 1800s. But it was always a huge unit, like you needed a horse to pull it type thing. So the Germans never thought we could condense it to fit on a ship. Unfortunately for them, we did. When I say we, the Brits, Americans, Allies. So many destroyer escorts would have these, and you're going to have an operator here just scanning for a certain frequency of the German messages from their radios. And if he catches it, it won't tell him what the message says, but it will tell him it's coming from that direction. And if you have two of these intercepting it, wherever that line crosses, that's probably where the U-boat is. So there's many instances of German U-boat sailors or captains on the surface, just looking around with binoculars, and all of a sudden, bam, there's a plane diving on them or a group of these ships charging in because they triangulated position. Slater did not have a HFDUF. She was slated to get one, but then Germany surrendered. So we have the documents that say HFDUF canceled on their work documents. So she would have gotten one, but we had the opportunity to get one of these many years ago, so we did. Now, if Slater did get one of these, this unit would have been all the way in the back of the ship, because if you have it up here, the antenna for it would have to be in place of where your air search radar is. So if you have one up here, that also means you can't track aircraft. That's not good.
Right.
So this would have been in the back if Slater actually had it, but where we had it in the back of the ship wasn't ideal for interpretation, especially for our guests. So last year we moved it up here because we do have pictures of destroyer escorts having the HFDUF right here.
Now, I know you've referenced it with some of the stories you told about the Slater and some of the other destroyer escorts during the war, but how exactly would the ships that would have been around a destroyer escort, were they serving with other destroyer escorts in a group, or were they primarily protecting kind of other bigger ships? What was the primary purpose there?
In the Atlantic, destroyer escorts were doing two main missions. The number one main mission was you had a group of cargo ships, oil tankers or aircraft carriers going across the ocean to England. You had to protect them from German U-boats. So on the outskirts of that entire convoy, you'd have X number of destroyer escorts in positions. You can have more destroyer escorts the larger the convoy. Less destroyer escorts, smaller convoy. Also in the Atlantic, especially later in the war, they formed hunter-killer groups. So you'd have a group of destroyer escorts paired with a small escort aircraft carrier. And their entire job was just cruise the ocean and hunt down submarines. They're not there to escort convoys, they're there to sink submarines. So they would have a bunch of these with those ships, and they would just try to locate the U-boats and then just go in there and attack. So U-505, the German U-boat in Chicago,
Yeah.
that was captured by the Guadalcanal hunter-killer group. So a group of destroyer escorts and the Guadalcanal escort carrier. Slater does have a small attachment to U-505. I'll tell you about that when we get back outside.
Sounds good.
In the Pacific, Huffduff wasn't being used really. So you were just using it to protect all of your ships, mainly the oil tankers, because these ships were going to be slower than your modern aircraft carriers and modern battleships, unless they were steam powered. At Okinawa and Iwo Jima, they would have been picket ships, anti-air. So unfortunately, a lot of destroyer escorts were hit by kamikazes. Some sank. Chart room here, so you're storing all of your maps, your charts. So the quartermaster, that's his main area. When the Slater was first built, this was the captain's at-sea cabin, and the chart room would have been part of CIC.
What is that weapon on the wall in the background there?
Yeah, so that's not that's a signal gun.
Okay.
So there's a battery in the buttstock, and then a light bulb inside. You just pull the trigger and you can send Morse code. There should be a flare gun hanging up on the wall as well.
Oh, yes, there is. Yep.
You can steer the ship if you like. So this is your pilot house. This is where you steer and help control the speed. So your helmsman is steering based on compass headings that he's given by the captain or the officer of the deck. So he has a magnetic compass that doesn't require any electricity. It's going to be accurate, but it's not going to be 100% accurate. That's why you have an electric gyro compass a few decks below us that is calibrated for true north. Problem is you need electricity. If it doesn't work, you want that backup. But here he's going to have a repeater screen hooked up to that electric compass, so we can also reference this. So steering, and then here you have speed. Now there's two handles because there's two propellers on World War II DEs, reverse and forwards. You have your speeds here. So if they want a speed change, you can set it to your desired speed. If you know the exact RPMs, you can also set RPMs down here. Once everything is good to go, push the buttons. It sends the message down to the motor rooms. As the name implies, engine order telegraph. All this does is telegraph, send a message. The guys in the motor room will see how fast we want to go. They'll adjust the speed of the ship from there.
Were there backup forms of communication for this kind of thing as well, if this kind of machine broke down?
So most famously, the Battle of Samar, Taffy 3, going up against the Yamato and everything. So Sam B. Roberts, the Hull, the Johnston, Gambier Bay, all those guys. So the Johnston Fletcher-class destroyer, after they got hit, they lost steering, communication. The captain, Captain Evans, was last seen by the Sammy B crew as they went by. He was on the fantail yelling down directions for steering, down to emergency steering. So the backup is if there's no electricity, you send runners, and you just communicate that way. But my favorite thing on the entire ship is the pendulum, your clinometer. It tells you how many degrees your ship is listing side to side. The most that we know about Slater, as I mentioned earlier, 55-degree rolls. That's not going to be very fun. And the most I've read is 78 from an action report.
Yeah, that's insane.
And there's no lights in here apart from a single red light. You can flip that on if you like. That's because you have open airports here, the glass windows. If you have a regular light bulb and that goes out, white light travels for miles. Red light does not travel that far. So at night, when the ship was out on the ocean, there wasn't a single light outside. So you were moving based on feel and experience. And you've got to hope your eyes are adjusted to darkness already. That's one thing the red light does help. So CIC, how that's lit in red lights, it helps looking at your screens in there, your radar screens. But also if you have to go outside at night, your eyes are already adjusted to darkness. Whereas if you're sitting in a room with just white lights, and all of a sudden you need to go outside at 2 in the morning, you're going to be blind for about 30 minutes. More communications everywhere to most areas of the ship. You have speaking tubes. So one here. This will go up to the flying bridge. The flying bridge does not have an overhead or roof. That's why they call it a flying bridge. So there's no protection, but your captain is up there, a couple officers, your lookouts, your sonar station is right above us. But allows them a 360-degree view of what's going on. They want him to change speeds or direction, they could just yell down. There's another one over there going to CIC so they can communicate if they get a target or something like that.
What is this wooden decking if there's water or?
Yeah, so you will be getting some water up here as the ship is rocking and rolling. Also, when you're just standing here for 4 hours on steel, it hurts. Mm-hmm. The wood, while still hard, it's a little better than steel. So it's not going to hurt your joints as much. For kids, when we have them on tour, if they're kind of misbehaving, they're afraid to walk on that, so I'll tell them that's where the dungeon is. Yeah. And then recently, 5 years ago, our volunteers fabricated this box here. So that's your vertical fighting light system. So it was very top secret. It was so top secret, we had to get it declassified in 2017, the plans for it. It was just an oversight by the Navy. But destroyer escorts up on our mast are going to have 3 boxes, rectangle boxes of lights, red, green, and white. And then you can turn them on in a certain order, pulsating or just a straight light. And then you can, turn that on at night. And it will tell the ships around you, hey, we're friendly. Problem is, early in the war, they didn't have this, so you didn't know if that was a friendly ship or not. So Frank Slater's ship, the San Francisco, only hours after he was killed, that was the night battle of Guadalcanal. The San Francisco got unfortunately riddled with shells from some Japanese ships, lost a bunch of her crew in the night battle. But they also accidentally fired on the Atlanta, the U.S. cruiser, in a friendly fire accident.
So this was just a goal of kind of avoiding that type of confusion, essentially.
Hopefully.
Yeah.
And for whatever reason, the war ends, and the Navy still feels like this is very top secret, this box of lights. So they sent radio messages to all the ships that still had it, saying, okay, before you come into port for the last time here, say you come back from the Pacific, you need to dispose of this box and the lights up on the mast, however you seem fit. So most of the ships would just throw them over the side into the water. I don't understand why they were doing that, but they did. So in 2020, we went to our second dry docking as a museum, and part of the main scope of the work was mast repair and fabrication or installing of World War II equipment. We knew Slater had the fighting lights, but we didn't have the plans for them. They were located by some volunteers in the National Archives, but I believe it was National Archives. They were still classified, so we had to get them declassified. But it was, again, to the point where after they stripped the mast of all the paint and everything, they located, it was like within like a hundredths of an inch or something like that, the original weld scars from where Slater's fighting lights were mounted. But everything is fully functional. At night, we can flip the switches, and then you would just push the buttons down here, and it will actually turn the lights on. It's nothing spectacular, it's just light bulbs. But, still,
apparently the Navy thought it was such a good idea.
But still, one of those things that we got working that just makes the ship just a little bit more special and more accurate to World War II.
That's really neat.
You also have 50 caliber machine guns. These are reproductions. A volunteer made these many years ago. There is a story, who knows who started it. It's probably not even true. But supposedly when the Slater went to the Pacific in the summer of '45, they were worried about the small boat protection. So none of the guns on Slater can depress to look right over the side. So at that point, you can't do anything. And while the Japanese also had the kamikaze planes, they also had the suicide boats They would just crash a boat into a ship laden with explosives and explode. So this was an attempt for small boat protection. So many ships did have guns like these mounted to each bridge wing just for that protection. Supposedly, when Slater went, Captain Blanc traded some Marines or soldiers a few crates of liquor for the 50s. Who knows? Did that thing happen in World War II? Yes. Did it happen with Slater? Who knows? Could be just a fairy tale. And we'll step outside. So this is a signal bridge. It's a mirror image on both sides. You have a 24-inch wide searchlight, extremely powerful. You turn that on at night on the open ocean, you can see it to the horizon. That could be 10 miles. If there's a U-boat out there on the surface, he now knows where you are. So you gotta be very careful when you choose to use that. Telescope, this does work. You're welcome to look through it if you like. You can adjust the clarity right there. Destroyer escorts did not have these. Destroyers did. So we thought it was a little cool thing to add. At the very least, it distracts the kids and adults. Then you also have your 12-inch signal lamp. So there's a light bulb inside. You open and close the shutters to send Morse code messages. So you could aim it at another ship in your convoy and send in a Morse code message. Remember, red light does not travel very far. So you could also attach a red light filter. So one, it won't travel very far, but also it will only go to the ship that you're aiming at.
Yeah. So just kind of like we heard in the radio room earlier, just like another form of communication with the ships around.
So your signalmen in World War II have to learn Morse code for either the radios or this. They have to learn semaphore. So the semaphore guy is going to be standing on the deck above us, holding two flags, just dancing his arms around. And he's sending a message to another ship. Or he also has to know signal flags. We can open this up for you. If you want to just grab that rope right there, just undo it. So there's flags in here for every letter of the alphabet, numbers and phrases. So it's a whole nother language, just like Morse code. So this is S, so what is that, Sierra? So they would put these up on the halyards and send messages to the entire convoy.
Yeah, a much older form of communication than some of these other technologies.
Yeah, we still will run these up every morning when we open. We just didn't do that today. Yeah, and just tie it back down. So I call these flag bags because in World War II it actually was a bag. So this is made out of steel today. This way just won't one big canvas bag to hold the flags. We do have a wonderful family of hawks that like to sit up on the mast. Actually, I do have the radar spinning right now. But they like to sit on the radar as it spins and just look for prey and then dispose of everything.
A little nature preserve in addition to the museum ship.
It is their ship now. In the mornings, they're screaming at us, telling us to get off. They leave us warnings all over the ship. Yeah. Just be careful as you come down.
Yeah.
Now this ladder you just came down, supposedly, it came off of the Franklin, the aircraft carrier. In early 45, it had returned to the US to New York City to be repaired after being decimated in the Pacific. I think in the battle they lost like 800 of their crew, but they kept the ship afloat. They come back, she's eventually repaired but never really sees service again. But when she's being repaired in Brooklyn, the Slater arrives in Brooklyn to get overhauled to go to the Pacific. And supposedly one night, we have letters from the Slater crew telling us the story. They snuck over there and they stole a ladder. And they say this is the ladder. We do have photos of them sitting here and they have a vertical ladder behind them. And then we have more photos of them again in the Pacific, and then this ladder appears.
There you go.
Who knows?
I think the wind got the captain's
It
plant
did.
there.
Yep. Or the XO came aboard and tried throwing it over. Yeah.
Does the wind get really bad here sometimes, or
It can.
Okay.
Yeah. There's nothing breaking it
Yeah.
as it comes upriver. The motor wellboat that's in the river, this is where you would actually store it, and you would attach it to the 2 davit arms if you wanted to use it. So you climb inside the boat, they'd swing the davits out and basically just crane you into the water, and then you'd go off. And then to come back, you come alongside, they'd swing the davits out again, lower the hooks down, the pelican hooks, hook it up to the boat, and then just lift you out of the water. We still have the ability to do all that. We haven't done it in 6 years. So we're at the point where we're worried that the institutional knowledge is leaving, because some of our volunteers who did all this have now passed away. So we're hoping later this month we'll bring the motor wellboat around and we'll bring it back on the ship. Problem is we got to do some repair work to all this, so it might hold off for another year. But for the past few years, we just bring the boat down to the port of Albany. There's a boat builder down there, and they just store it for the winter for free,
Yeah.
which is nice of them. But if we can just, again, do what they were doing in World War II, it just makes it more special. This is your 3-inch training gun, practice loader. So it's not an actual gun, but the 3-inch that we saw earlier in the tour, those guys would come up here, take the training rounds, pretend to set the fuses, and then load it just to get that muscle memory in or train your new guys. Again, what's great is we have about 400 photographs of the ship and crew from World War II. And one of my favorite ones, they're forming a line down the port side of the ship, and they're just doing that, just to get that rhythm in.
And then they could just do that while they're at sea and just kind of regularly keep that training going.
You want to get to the point where if all of a sudden you need to actually go use that gun, you don't have to think about it. It's just muscle memory at that point.
And you mentioned the number of photographs there. We hear some of the equipment going now.
Yep. Yeah, that's Ron. Ron has been volunteering on the ship since 1995. He's our longest volunteer.
So you mentioned the number of photographs of the ship. Is that unusual to have kind of that much of a record of a ship like this, or?
No. In World War II, if you wanted to take photos or video on a ship, you had to get permission from the Navy and the commanding officer of the ship. So fortunately, the crew did get that. However, you're very limited in what you could capture. So nearly 100% of all the photos we have, all exterior shots. Very few are inside.
Okay.
And the ones that are inside are in the motor room. And you're only seeing like one part of a panel. So they were very careful not to show things off. If they took a picture of just the ship as a whole, a lot of times you see the mast has nothing on it. They will actually edit parts of the mast out, because you don't want the enemy knowing what kind of equipment you have. So this is your 20mm Oerlikon, developed by the Oerlikon company out of Switzerland. Do you know what side Switzerland fought on?
Neutral?
They're fighting for everybody. Whoever's giving them the money. But yes, technically neutral. So we love this gun. The Navy loved it. Problem is, the company's in Switzerland, and there's U-boats between us and them. So they struck up a deal with the Oerlikon company. They bought the license to build it in the U.S. So hundreds, if not thousands, well, it would have been thousands, of these guns were built in World War II and mounted on ships like Slater. So Slater originally had 10 of these with just 1 barrel each. She came back from Greece with 9 guns, but 2 barrels each. We believe that happened in 1950. But this is also the type of gun Frank Slater was manning in San Francisco when he shot down that plane in November of '42. So you would have a belt behind you to strap you in. Your shoulders would go in the shoulder rest. You can go on that if you like. You would hold on to the 2 handles and you just move the gun with your body.
Yeah. And it moves pretty easily, actually. It's not.
And it would have been even easier
Yeah.
because you're greasing it up and maintaining it day by day. I could take this cover off.
So would this have just been one man operating it?
I'm going to have a minimum about 3 or 4 guys.
Okay.
This is one of the many game changers of World War II. That's your Mark 14 gun sight. We do have a semi-working one in the back. Basically, there's an air compressor on the front you would turn on, and you have gyros inside here. This is a lead computing gun sight. So you have range and elevation, deflection, all that good stuff. You'll figure out all that information about that plane you're trying to hit, and this will calculate the lead for you. So there's going to be 2 reticles inside. You keep your main reticle on the target, and then it will have another one in front of it to show you where you need to aim, and that's where you fire. So you don't have to figure out, okay, how far in front of this plane do I need to fire so that the bullets eventually hit it. So this does all the work for you. Very, very effective.
And so this would have been primarily anti-air.
Yes.
Would have been the use for this.
Problem is, the range on it is not very far. While it can output a rather large number of rounds per minute, the range is not far. So this is generally your last line defense. If all the other guns miss, you're hoping your 20s don't. And the problem with the kamikazes, you could shoot the plane up all you want, you could kill the pilot. But unless you just tore it into a million pieces, the wreckage is going to keep going. And if it's, a lucky hit, it's going to keep going and strike your ship. So this can put, many, many holes in that plane, but it might not take it down.
And so there were 10 of these, and how many of the 3-inch guns?
So there's 3 3-inch guns,
Okay.
2 in the front, there's 1 in the back, and then currently there's 3 of these 40mm Bofors. Originally, she only had 1 40mm. The ship was built with torpedo tubes. So just 3 torpedo tubes on a destroyer escort, and you can aim it off either side and just fire 3 torpedoes. Now you're using torpedoes against other ships, but this ship does not have any armor. So you don't want to get too close. So most destroyer escorts, including Slater, have the torpedo tubes taken off. And then Slater was added 4 single-barreled 40mm Bofors. So they had 2 platforms extending off the deck on either side. So they had a 40mm, a 40mm, and then 2 single-barreled 40mm back here. That's how Slater looked until May of '45 when she went to the Pacific. So in New York, they took those off and added the 2 twin-barreled 40s. This is your main gun to shoot down planes in World War II. At the very least, kamikazes. So there would have been ammunition lockers all throughout here for ammunition, but here's what you're firing. So you have 4 rounds at a time. Each one would weigh close to 4 pounds. You'd grab the entire clip, hand it to somebody that's standing on the platform behind this guy and on the other side. They load it into the top, that's just a cover, and then you turn, aim, and fire. As fast as you can load this is basically as fast as you can fire. So out of each barrel, and it's water cooled, which is great, about 100 to 120 rounds a minute in a perfect world. And you don't have to worry about changing out the barrel, it getting too hot. Now, what's even better for this gun is there's 3 tubs, 1, 2, and then 3 behind us. That's your gun director. So someone will climb up in there, whatever they aim at, they basically just have another Mark 14 gun sight, like what's on the 20. Whatever he turns and aims at, it is directly connected to the gun. So it will automatically turn and aim at that same target. And then all you need to do is load and fire.
So none of the guys actually on this part of the weapon were aiming it.
If they were using the gun director, no. But they're
Okay.
still here for that backup, that redundancy. Because it still requires electricity.
Yeah.
You lose power, he's injured or killed, now you switch to local control. There's just a lever here to pull out and engage local control, and then you can just start physically turning and aiming the gun. If you want to get up there, you can. There's little steps in the back.
We go. Climb on top.
Would you like a helmet?
Absolutely. Safety first.
Oh, yes.
My knee's a little bit in the way here.
Yeah, so you can put your feet on these footrests.
There we go.
There you go. And then you can put your other hand on the other handle there.
And then it just turns. Yeah, not too bad.
So you're called the trainer. You're going side to side. The pointer goes up and down.
Okay. So, and this could have been moving. I mean, obviously, you're trying to shoot down an aircraft, so you could have had this thing moving almost constantly as they're trying to track down
Yep.
the aircraft.
Yeah. And then the shell casings, after you fire, are being ejected out the front. There's a trap door on each side. You just shovel it down. There's a basket below us where they would collect. And then you do your best to do recycle the brass.
And do you let? I know you mentioned earlier about kind of the interactive exhibits. So, is this something that the public can always interact with when they're coming on board the ship?
100%. Generally, we spend most of the time on the guns, the 3-inch and the 40, and the 20 to a lesser extent, because we let you get up on it and move it. It distracts the kids, or also just gives the parents something to do. It's wonderful. Car companies made these. So again, it's from Sweden, neutral. We got the contract to build them, and then you had like Chrysler and I believe it was Ford or General Motors in the US building these guns. I believe these are Chrysler built. But highly, highly effective. For about a 4.5 mile range, upwards of about 120 rounds a minute out of each barrel. Plus throwing the gun director, you had a fairly high accuracy to shoot down planes, especially kamikazes.
Yeah. And was this another situation where if they ran out of the ammunition here, would they have to go below decks to get more?
So they did have lockers here. So in the meantime, they're taking it from there. The main deck magazine for these rounds is right below us, so they could get more immediately. Elam, Frank's brother, when he was on the ship, that was his station back here, that 40 millimeter. And you also notice the gun director here, the base is enclosed, whereas those are wide open. So those are later additions. This is original. Apparently during the winter, Elam and his gun crew, to get out of the cold wind and snow and whatever, would climb through that little door there and just huddle inside, drink their coffee, just get outside of the wind.
And I think it looked like there was a volunteer here painting earlier, so is painting a big part of the kind of preserving things, especially with all the metal?
100%. So yeah, he just needle gunned it to remove the rust. He just applied a coat of primer, and then we actually do 2 coats of primer, and then we'll do the paint.
Okay.
So the paint that's on the verticals, the bulkheads, the guns, that is a special 2-part paint, 2-component. It's actually very expensive. The deck paint usually costs us about $60 to $80 a gallon, but you can just imagine from front to back how much paint you need.
Right.
A lot of our money goes towards painting, and every year just goes up and up, the expenses. So it's tough. And you got to find the right type of paint that will hold up just to everybody walking on it. So you can see this has to get done again. Slater is very well restored. However, us working on it every single day, everywhere we go, all we see is rust. So we see this, we're disgusted by it.
You just always see the things that need work done.
Yes. We do acknowledge the ship is in wonderful condition, but we always have stuff like this to work on. And as soon as you finish working on this, there's going to be another part of the ship that has to be worked on. It's never ending. That's why we rely heavily on volunteer labor. That's why we're closed 2 days of the week, so that we can get some of this work done. Because, I mean, as you're walking through, you hear how loud that stuff is. We can't do that on 5 days of the week when we have tours on board. So it's tough. We are fortunate that we have a great volunteer group. We're located where we are, and we're a small ship, and there's only one ship. Other museums that have one huge vessel like a battleship or a carrier, I don't know how they do it.
Takes a
Or
lot.
they have multiple ships in their museum.
Right.
It's tough.
As the ship operates now, is it kind of able to stay in this similar state forever at this point? Is there kind of an end of life sort of?
You know, as long as we have these volunteers and the resources to contract out when we need to, the ship should stay, you know, in perpetuity.
Okay.
Who knows? The biggest problem is we have such a thin hull. So part of that, so in 2014, we went to dry dock for the first time as a museum. The main goal of that was hull preservation. So do you know where the area of the hull degrades fastest?
I don't.
right at that water line. That's where all the waves are crashing against. So in 2014, we made the decision, the entire circumference at that water line, roughly a foot above water and 3 feet under, we welded roughly a 1/4 inch plate of steel, the entire circumference. So at that water line, it is thicker today than it was in World War II. So at least we're buffed up that way. It also helps protect against the ice. We can have, I believe it was 3 winters ago, we had 18 inches of ice out here, up against originally 3/8 inch steel.
Wow.
So we're lucky we buffed it up when we did. At that point, it got, pretty dangerous. We were worried. So we called the Coast Guard. They came up, and we could see them coming up. They do keep the ice broken from the Port of Albany down here all the way to New York City, because there is shipping that comes up. But they don't do it any further because nothing big can fit under the bridge. So we saw them coming up, and then they stopped for like 20 minutes. Then they called us. They said, "Yeah, we got 18 inches of ice down here. I don't know if we can break it. Give us an hour." And they kept just going back and forth, and finally it started breaking. And then all day, they just kept doing circles right around here, coming right up alongside us, breaking the ice. We have a wonderful relationship with the Coast Guard up here. We do act as a floating pier for their boats. So where they are stationed, unfortunately, their pier doesn't really go up and down with the tide. So if the river levels get high, they have to move. So they come upriver, they tie up right along here. We actually installed an electrical connection right above his head, so they can actually hook up their boat to us and use our electricity. They can come aboard, use our showers. They can sleep on the ship if they want. They can run their sewage pipes to our other side and pump their sewage off. So we help them, they help us.
Yeah, that's amazing, right? Yeah, just mutually beneficial relationship there. That's really neat.
Yeah, and they're always great. Every time we go to dry dock, so in 14 and 2020, they make sure that we're up to code, and they, help us out getting there. So there's more needle gunning going on. That's Greg. He's a new volunteer, but he's a retired submariner. He was a lieutenant commander. But he comes up every year. He's also a tour guide for us. And during the work weeks, he comes and he just stays on the ship the entire week.
And the needle gunning is primarily to get rid of the rust?
Yes. So he's bringing that down to bare steel.
Okay.
He'll then wire wheel it to make it even better. 2 coats of primer, and then he'll paint it. That is Greg, right? Yes, it is Greg.
Behind all this stuff.
Yeah.
That stop so you can talk?
No, it's okay. I was just describing what you do.
Okay.
So yeah, it's because of volunteers like him that we can keep the ship open.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And what is in this section up here?
Yeah, so we have depth charges. We'll go all the way in the back.
Yeah.
So these depth charges are anti-submarine. So there'll be about 300 pounds of explosive inside. For these types, they just roll off the back of the ship into the water and sink. And on the end of the depth charges, you're gonna have a wrench, and you just twist it, and that's in feet how far underwater you want to explode. And as it sinks and it reaches that depth, it goes boom. There's depth charges on the sides as well. Those actually shoot off the ship and land in the water, but same deal. You set the depth, it'll explode. Between depth charges, the hedgehogs up front, and other means, German U-boats in World War II, I believe it was like a 70, 80% chance of not making it home. US subs, 1 or 2%, I believe the figure is. And then you got the ensign. Do you know how many stars are on the flag?
Let's see, is it 48?
You got it. 48, yeah. Hawaii and Alaska, not states
Yeah.
yet. Yeah, so we try to only fly 48-star flags on the Slater. There you go. So there's bells everywhere, and you can pull it and ring the bell, tell you what time it was. So Every 30 minutes they'd ring the bell. You can ring the bell if you'd like.
Thank you, thank you. Very satisfying. So these are what you were just talking about. These would go off the side.
Yeah.
Depth charges.
So you would take this cover off, and this is called a K-gun. And there's just a breech you would open up, you would load gunpowder, close it, there'd be a firing pin that would strike, and the explosion that's generated would go up through the tube and just launch the depth charge off the side. So the main reason these were used over destroyers in World War II, apart from there being more destroyer escorts than destroyers, the turning radius for this ship is roughly half that of a normal destroyer. So it's ideal for locating a submarine, dropping depth charges, quickly turning back around, dropping more before he can get away. And here's all of our paint. We go through a lot of paint. Hello.
Hey. Oh.
We'll go down here, just watch your head.
Okay.
So here is your sick bay. This is the only area on the ship where you can get medication, patched up, or surgery, apart from the triage stations that we saw earlier. This is all you get on a destroyer escort, this small little compartment. And there would have been a safe in there for your morphine and medicinal alcohol. You have an autoclave, washing station.
And so this would have been kind of any medical work that needed done.
So every morning there would be a sick call. If you're not feeling well, come on down, the doctor will check you out. If you have to do surgery in here, recuperation is generally, you're staying right there. There was the last destroyer escort, the last German U-boat sank in U.S. waters was by the Atherton destroyer escort, cannon class. That destroyer escort ended up in the Philippines. Unfortunately, she capsized 3 years ago. They were going to turn her into a museum, but then a typhoon came through.
Uh-oh.
So there was 6 of these ships just a few years ago. But the U-boat, U-853, had left Europe, I want to say late March of 45. Their entire mission was go harass shipping on the east coast of the U.S. Arrives off the coast of Maine in April of 45, actually sinks a small vessel, and it wasn't until the late 90s when the Navy finally conceded it was sunk by a German U-boat. Up until the late 90s, they assumed it was just a boiler explosion. But some divers went down in the late 90s and they found the boiler intact. And the crew that survived had always said before they sunk, they saw the conning tower of a German U-boat in the distance. So she sank a boat up off the coast of Maine, traveled south, and then ended up off the coast of Rhode Island, about 6 miles. May of 45, there's a U-boat 6 miles off of Rhode Island. It locates I think it was a cargo ship of some sort, and sinks it. Unfortunately for the U-boats, there was a convoy returning from the Mediterranean, and then the escorts were traveling north to Boston just for further orders. And as they're traveling north, they get a radio message, hey, a ship was just sunk a few miles away, go investigate. The Atherton, a couple other DEs, and a Coast Guard cutter arrive on scene, and they see the cargo ship in flames and sinking. Turns out the U-boat, instead of attacking and then going away, stayed there. And it was sitting under the wreck as it's burning, and it was hiding. The water was only about 150 feet deep, so very shallow. Quickly located by sonar, it tries to escape. They keep dropping depth charges and hedgehogs. Finally, debris comes to the surface. Full loss of life, all hands. The debris that comes to the surface includes officer caps, pieces of wood, planking, but also a life raft from the U-boat. And the Atherton gets credit for sinking it, but as they're attacking and sinking that German U-boat, guess who is sleeping right here outside their sickbay? A German POW. So part of that convoy, when they were coming back to the Mediterranean, there were ships laden with German POWs going to camps in the U.S. And halfway across, one of the German POWs, he was a private, his name was Franz Krones, his appendix burst. The doctor, surgeon, was actually on the Atherton. So they highly transferred him to the Atherton, brought him down the ladder, and they removed his appendix in sickbay. We have a video message from him from the 2000s thanking the crew for saving his life. And he said they couldn't knock him out. They didn't have all the anesthesia. But they made it so he couldn't feel anything. He was really loopy. But he said he could smell everything as what's happening. So he survives the surgery. He's recuperating outside the bed. The captain will come down every day to check on him, make sure he was okay. And then he's about to get unloaded in Boston when they get that order, hey, there's a German U-boat. So there's a German soldier on the Atherton when she sinks a German U-boat. Yeah. Yeah, the history of some of these ships is just so much fun to get into.
Yeah, just endless stories, especially with so many of them, and just the different experiences.
Yep. And what's great is a lot of the deck logs or war diaries for not only destroyer escorts, but also all ships in World War II, or many, are housed at the National Archives and have been digitized. So you can look up, what did the Atherton do on this date? And it will give you a rundown in their own words, in their war diary, what happened. So this is another berthing compartment for the enlisted crew. We're going to enter the aft motor room. A couple things to note. Originally, there would have been 3 racks here and foot lockers. This is just a bulkhead. We put this door in ourselves to facilitate restoration work, but also tours. It is watertight, but originally, this door is not here. And then watch your step everywhere we go.
How do you kind of balance out that need for, obviously, tour groups to come through, but wanting to preserve the original look of the ship? Is that kind of a constant sort of debate and back and forth you're having?
And it's very tough. Our goal is 1945 accuracy. Obviously, we have to make some concessions. There's laws and stuff. You know, we need emergency lighting. We actually, the fire marshal allowed us these battle lanterns. This is our emergency lighting. So it is hooked up, and if it senses that electricity goes out, those battery inside these automatically kick on and provide light. So we've been able to adapt to modern code and regulations. But yeah, it's also tough. There's no door there originally. Are we harming the ship by cutting a door in? A little bit, yes. But if we don't do that, this place never would have been restored, or it would have taken much longer. Because now the only way to get in and out are vertical ladders. And you trying to get 60, 70, 80-year-old volunteers up and down those ladders with their tools, you know, that's a risk. Your visitors, if you're making them go up and down the vertical ladders, if they fall and get hurt, you're already paying a stupid amount in insurance every year.
Yeah.
That's only going to go up. So you need to do what's best for your mission and your museum. We try to do 1945, but you know, we will make concessions here and there.
Yeah, that makes sense.
All right, so I'm going to have to turn some lights on as we go through here. Same deal. We put this door in ourselves. So there would have been no way to get from motor room to engine room or vice versa. You'd have to climb up, walk over, climb down.
It's a lot bigger in here than you expect at first when you start turning all the lights on.
So that's because it's a diesel plant. If this was a steam plant, it'd be a much more cramped space. So there's 4 engineering spaces on board, from front to back, labeled B1, 2, 3, and 4. So everything you see in these 2 rooms, same deal up front. Difference is, this is clean and restored, forward is not. A lot of stuff is still in Greek. There's oil and grease everywhere. The deck plates are loose or missing. It's kind of dangerous. And everything else is going to be on opposite sides. So for propulsion, you have 4 16-cylinder, so that's number 3, this is number 4, 16-cylinder Cleveland diesel engines. About 1,600 horsepower each. So this is a diesel electric configuration. So you turn these diesel engines over with compressed air from those air tanks. They're connected through the bulkhead to 2 electric Allis-Chalmers generators. The generators, now creating electricity, are connected to electric motors, which then spin your propeller. So for each propeller, and there's 2, you have 2 engines, 2 generators, and 2 motors. Now, if something catastrophic happens to the ship, you can function with just 1 engine, 1 generator, and 1 motor. You're not going to be very fast, you won't be very nimble, but at the very least you can move a little bit. Mm-hmm. Navy love these. They're locomotive engines, essentially, of the 1940s. They're easy to maintain. They don't really break down that often. They're reliable, they're efficient, and it's not high pressure, high temperature steam, so it's a little safer. Downside, you're slower, but you're still faster than the German submarines, and that's all that matters.
Is this an area that would have had a lot of guys in here kind of doing maintenance each day, or did they not need to necessarily keep up on it on sort of a daily basis?
Just a normal cruising day, yeah, there's only going to be a handful of guys in there. But when you go to general quarters, yeah, you're going to beef that up. But that is right out there. That's the outside of the ship. That's 3/8" steel. You're at the waterline. You get hit by a torpedo, it's going to be most likely in the engineering spaces. But because this would be one enclosed room, everything is watertight. This room could be just destroyed, and as long as there's no holes poking through the bulkheads, you'll probably still stay afloat. As long as your keel didn't break. Here you have your 8-cylinder diesel generator. There's 2 of these on the ship, one in the front, one here. This is what would power the electricity aboard the ship. So you have an 8-cylinder engine, and then the generator portion is connected directly right below my feet. The electricity then goes to this distribution board. This is live because we're hooked up to shore power. And then from here, it branches out to all the systems on the ship. We are very fortunate. Some of our more dedicated and longest serving volunteers are retired electricians, and some are even Navy electricians, so they know how to do all this, how to repair things.
That's fantastic. Yeah, it looks in great shape.
Oh, it is, yeah. And then you have testing up here for electrical grounds. Big problem with these ships, if you have an electrical ground, it will slowly eat away at the steel hull, and then eventually you get a hole. So we can turn these on and off to see if there's a ground somewhere, and if there is, we can go track it down and fix it. Sometimes it could just be a short in a wire, it could be something just wrong with a light bulb, but if you don't fix that, you can get issues years down the road. I mentioned a little earlier, we had torpedo tubes on the Slater, and again, air to shoot them off, compressed air. So that was the air compressor that they would use to shoot the torpedo tubes off of the Slater. When they removed the torpedo tubes in the summer of 1944, they retained the air compressor because you can just modify it and use it for other things. So we've kept it. Oh, and I forgot to mention that 8-cylinder that's below us is fully operational. We can run it if we need to. So when we go to dry dock, of course now we're not hooked up to shore power, we'll just throw some diesel in that and it will power most of the lights on the ship. There was a fire in here with this engine in World War II. Only a couple weeks after they were commissioned, they go to leave the docks in Tampa, and there's 2 sailors down here. They open up all the fuel valves, they turn it on, and it ignites. Huge fire and explosion in here. Severely burned. They had to be evacuated up the vertical ladders outside, and then they went to the Navy hospital, spent months in the hospital, and both were discharged because of their injuries, but they survived. The Navy did an investigation, and they said fault was with 2 parties. One, it was the sailor's own fault. Basically, when they had opened up the fuel valves, it had malfunctioned, too much fuel and oil entered the system, and it blew up. But they also said it was General Motors' fault. It shouldn't have been able to happen in the first place. So the ship was delayed by about 10 days. They had to repair the engine, the generator, all this, repair electrical cabling, but 80 years later, it still runs.
So was that a like a common issue at all, or that just was a one-off incident that happened on the Slater?
It was just an accident.
Okay.
And unfortunately, those kinds of things did happen during World War II. While nobody ever died on the Slater, a lot of guys got hurt. The most memorable one, they're in Japan or somewhere in the Pacific. The war is over. They survived. Now they're just hanging out until they get orders to go home. And there's a sailor, he's working on something above him with a screwdriver, and it slips out of his hand into his eye.
Oh.
So he survives the war and then gets a screwdriver into the eye. So, yeah, accidents happen.
Yeah.
Guys fall down the ladder. Remember, their feet are going to be wet. The ship is rocking and rolling. They might be carrying something, so they can't hold on to the rails. Yeah.
So you mentioned that the other area similar to this has not been kind of preserved as well. Are there hopes to do more work on some of those areas of the ship like that? Or are there always kind of goals of preserving more areas?
So we are at that point where we don't really have anything major to restore. So there's always in the back of our head, hey, maybe we restore the forward engine room. The forward motor room we kind of use as a storage space. So that would kind of be a pain in the butt to restore. Is it worth restoring the forward engine room? Yes and no. You want to make it better so it doesn't hurt the ship, but no one's ever going to see it because you can just come back here and see this.
Sure,
stuff.
right.
But, if we don't really have anything to do, we'll start working on it a little bit. But yeah, what's great about up there is most all this stuff is still in Greek. We've, put a lot of the English back because some of the equipment up there does run, so we need the English. But we do try to keep some stuff in Greek because this was a Greek ship for 40 years.
Is there records of how effective these ships were in the Greek Navy in terms of what the Greeks thought of their use?
We haven't delved too deep into the Greek use of the ship. Mm-hmm. One, there's a language barrier. Two, it's on the other side of the world, really. So it's tough. I would love to start working on that. We do get Greek sailors that served on this ship or other destroyer escorts with the ship, and they'll come aboard. They'll tell us some stories, but yeah, that's our next major project. Because without it, we can't tell the full story of the ship.
Right.
That's 40 years we're missing. Yeah, we get the occasional story from a Greek sailor. I had one, who knows if it's true, but he said they were patrolling the Aegean. I gave him a tour a couple years ago. And, Greece and Turkey don't exactly like each other. Much more back then. Nowadays, they tolerate each other. Supposedly, Aetos Slater was patrolling. There's a Turkish Navy vessel, and both were stubborn. They played chicken, and they both won because nobody moved. And I guess they slid across the side of each other. Who knows? We believe the forward engine in the forward engine room was actually removed during the Greek service. So we do have access to the serial numbers for all of these engines and motors. And we can match it up to the World War II documents. Say, yeah, this serial number went to Slater, here it is. The forward engine, the serial number isn't even close. It went to the USS Jack, a World War II submarine. In the late 50s, we gave the Jack to Greece. They used it for like a decade. They gave it back to us in the late 60s. We sank it as a target in the Mediterranean. At some point, something happened with Slater's #1 16-cylinder engine. Either the entire thing was removed, and then they took the engine from the Jack because it's the same model, and then just swapped them, or they swapped some parts. But the serial number on that engine right now is for the Jack. But that's something we would like to learn. But we've never made that connection with their military archives. And who knows, do they keep track? Do they keep their records for 60 years? Or do they just throw everything out? If they do, then okay, we're not going to learn anything. But maybe it's going to take us going to visit Greece and making a contact there. Who knows?
It's a good excuse to go visit Greece.
Yeah. I would like to know what the ship was doing in the 1970s when they had the military junta for the 70s. What was the crew doing? But I guess this ship did participate in a lot of the NATO exercises. So they were using it for exercises, a patrol ship, but also a training ship. Roughly 10,000 Greek sailors served aboard this ship. That's more than was in the U.S. Navy on this ship in World War II. So, yeah, we would love to get their stories, their memories. I did give a tour earlier this season. We had a Greek sailor. He was on this ship for just over 2 years, and when the military junta took over, he left the Navy and came to the U.S. He's been living in the U.S. since the 70s, and has never gone back. But, we got to hear some stories from him. So this, if you remember up in the pilot house where you steer the ship and control the speed, this is the final destination for the speed. So your engine order telegraph with the 2 handles, it comes right here. So they would be the black arrow. So say they want to go 2/3 ahead, you would then turn your red arrow to 2/3 to match it, acknowledge it by sending the message back. And now we know 2/3. You have your handy dandy chart for a Cannon class destroyer escort, which the Slater is. 2/3 speed, and if you know your knots, you can go anywhere from 5 to 8 knots, and that's your RPMs for either 2 propeller shafts or 1 propeller shaft. You then just turn the hand wheels until you get that RPM readout right there. And then your motors will kick in to that RPM and turn your propellers. So some of the only interior photographs we have from World War II are sailors standing right here, and you can just barely make out the hand wheels and the chart, and they're just posing for a photograph.
So would this have been manned 24 hours
Yes.
to always receive commands down?
Yep. Because this is the only place you can control the speed, apart from the mirror image in the front for the other propeller. So this is controlling that propeller shaft. The guys up front are controlling the propeller shaft that's over here. And then you also have, unfortunately the lights aren't on really, but this is degaussing. Should be a light switch in here though. It doesn't really work. Let's see. So degaussing panel. So this is your attempt to demagnetize your hull. So the ship is going to have a magnetic field from when it's being built. So there will be copper wires up against the hull, and you will turn this on, it will send electricity into that and lower the magnetic field of the hull. The Germans had magnetic mines. You didn't have to hit it to explode. You just sail past, it will detect a change in the magnetic field, and it will go boom. One of these ships, the USS Rich, was a destroyer escort that took part in the Normandy landing, so June 6th, 44. 2 days after, so June 8th, they're still patrolling off the coast of Normandy, and an American destroyer inadvertently sailed into a minefield just off the beaches. Started sinking. So the Rich came in to assist. They put their wellboat in the water, but they were waved off, said, we're okay, we're not really sinking, there's other people coming to help. So the Rich started backing up what they thought the same way they came, and then they triggered a mine. The action report states the only damage from the first explosion, it broke the glass on the gauges in their engineering spaces. But a minute or so later, a second mine explodes directly under them and breaks their keel. They start sinking, and then a third mine, more damage. They sank in about 45 feet of water. But their degaussing their action report states degaussing was on, it was running, but it still triggered the mines because they were already just too close. So it doesn't always work. And when it does work, I guess you don't really know it works because there's no explosion.
Right.
So,
You hope to never find out. I
exactly.
guess.
Yeah. There's some great movies about the Philadelphia experiment. Destroyer escort the Eldridge. Supposedly, when they turned that on, the ship teleported, and it malfunctioned. And when it reappeared, there's guys welded into the steel, crying out in agony. Yeah. The Eldridge went to Greece with the Slater. Yeah. And we just found out last year that DESA, the group that got the Slater, shortly afterwards, the Greek Navy sent DESA a fax saying, hey, we have the Eldridge. We have plans to scrap it or sink it. Do you want it? We're like, guys, we don't have the money to maintain this thing. We can't maintain two. So we were offered the Eldridge as well, but we just couldn't take it.
Yeah. I think that's something that's important to remind people. You see, I think a lot of people online, whenever there's a ship that's scrapped, or like it was the SS United States that was recently turned into being turned into a reef, there's always limited resources,
There
and so
is.
as amazing as it would be to just preserve
Everything.
every destroyer and every ship from World War II,
Yeah.
it just isn't feasible.
Yeah, and you can always say, well, the government should help you out, give you money. But then you're sinking money into, the government's having to give money to everybody. So it's just not feasible, unfortunately. And you need the tourism to sustain this. There's limited places where you can sustain a ship much larger than this. And they already have museum ships. So if you have a ship the size of the USS United States or an aircraft carrier, or say another battleship all of a sudden appears and needs a museum, a home port, all the major cities really already have a ship. So where are you going to put it? Okay, some small town in Long Island is offering pier space. Great. Do they have the tourism that's going to support it? Maybe not. So it's tough. We would love to have more tourism here, but we're closed half the year because it's wintertime. So, yeah, a lot of people just think there's money for everything. There just isn't. Of course, the larger museums, they have higher tourism, so they can do more. But the larger the ship, the larger the bills. So it's vice versa.
Right, exactly.
Speaking of the SS United States, we can go right back here. Hopefully this doesn't get anybody angry. But here we have the ship's original Ingersoll Rand air compressor. This was running up until the summer of 2023. We were using for our needle guns. It finally died on us. Our volunteers took it apart, and it was to the point where it might not be able to be repaired. So they put it back together cosmetically. SS United States gets towed down to, is it Mobile, Alabama right now, for prep to get sunk as a reef. They have essentially the same exact model air compressor. So we were able to go down along with our museum ships, Battleship Cove, New Jersey, I think Galveston went, Buffalo, and we were able to grab things. So instead of it getting sent to the scrapper or to the bottom of the Gulf, it's now finding a second life on museum ships. So this is now a mishmash of Slater and SS United States parts on the air compressor, and it works now. So the SS United States is still living on Slater and other museum ships.
Yeah, that's really neat. So there are useful things that are taken off before it's...
Yes.
Yeah.
Plus, they're hoping to create a museum as well down in Florida. They have already removed the smokestacks of the SS United States. That'll be, the main part of the museum. So I wish them well. But yeah, it's good to know parts of not only the SS United States, but other ships that have since been lost to time still find use on other ships. I'm willing, it's probably a safe bet to say every single museum ship in the US probably has something from another ship, a totally different type of vessel that they've been able to use. So, and as long as you keep that institutional knowledge saying, oh, hey, part of this is from the SS United States. Now you can tell that to visitors, and now you can start talking about the SS United States, educating them about that ship. Or how I said about the gauge, the attack transport earlier. I can tell visitors about the attack transport. The radar that's spinning right now up on Slater's mast came from the gauge. They used that radar at Okinawa to shoot down kamikazes. And it's the same exact radar that Slater had. But ours was removed during the Greek Navy. And one thing I didn't mention in these rooms, imagine not only the noise, but the heat, especially in the engine room. When we have the 8-cylinder running down there, it's 120 degrees in the summertime. Wow. With just the 8-cylinder, not including the 16s. So these poor guys.
Do you have any favorite movies that depict destroyer escorts, or favorite you feel like are most accurate or just most entertaining that you recommend to people?
So, actually, Slater was in a few movies.
Okay.
So during her Greek service, there was a Greek film called Alice in the Navy, filmed largely aboard Slater, Aitos. It was about a sailor's girlfriend or wife or somebody love interest. They dressed her up as a sailor and snuck her aboard the ship. So, and it's a comedy. They filmed a lot of it on the ship and off the ship. Guns and Everone.
Yeah.
The closing sequence when the last time they're firing at ships at sea. There's looks like Fletcher-class destroyers, but there's also single-stacked smaller ships, and it's believed that those are the destroyer escorts we gave Greece, so Slater is one of them. You can't identify them because it's dusk. It's in the distance, but in 2007, 2008, a Japanese film company came aboard and actually filmed a World War II movie. It was only released in Japan. The English title is Last Operations Under the Orion, I believe. And it's basically about a Japanese submarine that's being attacked by a destroyer escort. Low budget, but it was still received fairly well, I assume, in Japan. If they ever reached out again, say, hey, can we close the ship down for 2 months and film a movie, we would do it in a heartbeat. They left the ship cleaner than they found it.
Wow.
They were very kind and courteous, plus we made more money being closed than we would if we stayed open. Greyhound is always a good choice. Now, there's no destroyer escorts in that, but it's depicting exactly what these ships did in the Atlantic, escorting convoys and sinking submarines. We can always nitpick movies. There's stuff in Greyhound that's not accurate, that we have issues with, but for the most part, Greyhound is one of the most accurate World War II depictions of convoy duty in the Atlantic. So we were very excited when that movie came out. Plus, it was filmed, much of it, on the Kidd in Baton Rouge, a museum ship. So the fact that museum ships are making their way into movies is great. The Kidd was also featured in Battleship with Rihanna.
Oh, yeah.
I guess when they were finished filming, they had realized, okay, we forgot to film a certain scene on the Missouri in Pearl Harbor. But the Kidd had, something that fit into that scene, so they just filmed it on the Kidd instead of the Battleship. The Iowa's been in movies. Was it also in was it Cher's music video in the 80s or something?
Yes. Yep, exactly.
Yeah.
The Missouri, I think, was the one she.
Oh, was that the Missouri?
Yes, it was the Missouri that she filmed on.
Okay.
Yeah.
I was gonna say because one of our volunteers served on the Iowa. He's a tour guide. He was in the Iowa in the late 80s, so it's always fun to talk to him about it. Here's the bathroom for roughly 140 crew sleeping back here. That's Oswald. So you sit on the seats, see water coming in, and just flushes everything out. Any idea why there's a red seat?
For medical, sick.
What kind of sickness?
I don't know.
STDs.
Okay.
So what's important to note is we've never found official Navy manuals or whatever saying you need a red toilet seat for STDs or venereal diseases. But we've had so many World War II vets tell us, yeah, we have the red seat for STDs. So yeah, a guy comes back from Liberty, he's got an STD, they would have him sit on the red seat. After you use the head, you have the washroom to wash your hands, shave, brush your teeth, or to take a shower. There's 4 showers here for the 140 crew. And they do work. So the volunteers that are living back here during the work week, they take all their showers right here. This was also the aft emergency prep area for triage. So you remember the officer's wardroom, you can go on the table.
Yes.
There would have been 2 more lights right here and a foldable table so you could do some surgery as well. The radiators, so 1, 2, 3, those are from the SS United States as well. Yeah, they were just installed this summer.
Oh, wow.
So
how do you find out about parts like that you need? You just hear about a ship that's being scrapped and it's like they might have something we need, or...
So we have a volunteer and then Tim, our director. They kind of have an idea of what's still missing from the ship. So if a ship is being scrapped, they'll go down there and they might see it. So we still have diagrams or blueprints of all the piping on the ship, all the electrical. And that will also tell you, okay, you had radiators here. And then we just try to find, go through pictures of World War II DEs. What's the type of radiator they had? Okay, it kind of looked like that. And then went down to the USS United States. We see them, and we can use it. Fortunately, the USS United States, my understanding is she was built largely with, a lot of the same stuff. She was only built a few years after the end of the war, so there's still surplus equipment around.
Right.
Your hot water tank. So you got 140 guys all vying for a shower. That's your hot water tank. So once, maybe twice a week. Engineer's office. So those filing cabinets are full of original blueprints and manuals to our engines. And engines on other ships. We keep all that stuff too. And then here's your machine shop. So our volunteers still use it as a machine
it's still getting
shop.
a lot of use,
Oh,
yeah.
100%, yes. So I believe this is like a 1970s-ish lathe. I'm not well versed on the, all this stuff, but we do have the exact model of lathe that would have been on Slater. It's in storage. There's no sense in using it when we could just use a more modern version. Drill press might be original. This is the original welding equipment right here in gray. Obviously, we don't use that. We have the modern stuff down here. Sanding equipment, more welding stuff. This is the original workbench from World War II. You can see this thing has seen some stuff. All the nicks taken out of it.
Yeah.
I love on the deck right below your feet. My best guess is at some point someone's learning to weld. Was it one of our volunteers or a Greek sailor? They're doing some
Practice.
some practice welding. You know, at some point, so the engine room that we were just in, where we were standing, was right below us. At some point, they had to cut a hole in the deck to take something out or push something down there. And that's the repair job. Just bolt it back into place. So this is where the 20 millimeter clipping room would have been. So right above us is the 20 millimeter guns. When they would run out of ammunition, they would pass through the scuttle here, the empty 60 round drum, and there would be a table and everything, more ammunition in here. They would then reload it and pass it back to you. We're not using our guns anymore, so this becomes tool storage. Some ships that had torpedoes, this could also be their torpedo maintenance area. You're not going to fit a torpedo down here to work on it, but you can work on some of the parts as well.
Was limited ammunition an issue, or are there records of him ever firing so much that they ran out, or?
The only instance I know about that happening with the Destroyer Escort was the Salem B. Roberts, Taffy 3 off of Samar in the Philippines. When she sank, I believe they said they were loading just a couple of the last 5-inch projectiles, and you have hundreds on the ship. So they fired everything they had before they finally sank. Battles generally only last a few minutes. The battle in which Frank Slater was killed only lasted about 10 minutes, and then it was over. So you usually have enough. And then every time you go into port, you just replenish. And on Slater, in the Atlantic, you're not dealing with air threat, really, especially late in the war. You're dealing with submarines. So you just need a few hundred depth charges and a few hundred hedgehogs, and you don't have to sink the sub. If he's in there, you just keep him underwater, let your convoy get ahead by 100 miles, and then just stop attacking and go join him. When he's underwater, he can barely move. He's not going to catch up to you. Even on the surface, he's not going to catch up to you. So you don't have to sink the sub. Ideally, you do, but if you can just keep him down, use 100 depth charges, and then get out of the area, that's a job well done. And then here is your passageway, just a hallway down the center of the ship. So there'll be guys running through here all hours of the day. And then most Navy ships have a store. Destroyer Escorts did as well. It's a closet you could fit one person. Today we use it as storage for a gift shop. But here's some of the items you could buy. My favorite, your dungarees, your jeans, $1.30. But all this money will go into the crew's recreation fund. And then when it reaches a certain point, the crew can decide, hey, we want to buy, something nice for everybody to enjoy. Take the money and go do that. One of these ships was still in use during the Vietnam War. So it received orders to travel to the coast of Vietnam and just patrol off this one sector. So the captain, I forget his rank, maybe a lieutenant commander, last name Arnheider, so the Arnheider affair. He was all gung-ho about getting into combat. He was that type of captain. He decided the whaleboat they had, not sufficient enough. So he took the cruise recreation fund and he bought a speedboat for the ship. The pictures of it are amazing. They're out cruising. Granted, he's right, that thing is fast. They mounted a 50 caliber machine gun in the center. They painted a shark's teeth and mouth on the fronts. It looks badass, I'll give him that. But he took the money from the cruise recreation fund.
Right, wow.
So now he didn't do any favors for himself. Now the crew is angry with him, or now morale is a little bad. They get off the coast of Vietnam, he's patrolling his sector, nothing's happening. Then he's hearing radio chatter that there's ships, north of him, 100 miles or whatever, and they're firing at shore targets, and oh my God, there's action going on. So he, without orders, would leave his station and go up there and then maneuver his ship between the other ships and the land. So now he's putting his ship and crew in danger because they're firing over him. But he wanted to be part of that action. And it finally started not only frustrating the crew, but it was now frustrating captains of other ships. So he was reported to the Navy and they relieved him of command after 99 days. Yeah. There's a movie about it and a book. So, worst thing you could do is anger your crew as a captain.
Right.
All right, guys, that was the tour.
Wow.
I hope you enjoyed it.
Incredible, absolutely. Thank you so much for all this time. I don't even know how long we've gone here, but it's been amazing.
And
so.
you got some food out of it, too.
Yes,
That
I
was
mean,
great.
really, what top-tier experience here.
Yes.
But before we end, I did want to give you a chance for people who are interested in visiting or supporting the ship and just learning more. You can give your website and just kind of where you're most active
Sure.
online if people want to keep up.
So if you're unable to visit our Facebook page, just Facebook USS Slater, we have just over 30,000 followers. We post every single day of the week, whether photographs of the work happening on the ship. Sundays we do like a memorial type post for Destroyer Escort that might have been lost, or just a history of the Destroyer Escorts. We'll post historic photographs of Destroyer Escorts. So Facebook is #1 avenue. Our website, ussslater.org, is a fabulous resource. We have information on most compartments of the ship, the weaponry, the different types of weaponry and propulsion systems, not only what Slater had, but other Destroyer Escorts as well. We do have a podcast called DE Classified, so Declassified. Every month, those interns that we hire to act as tour guides, we also allow them to research a Destroyer Escort, write a history of the ship using documents we have, documents they can find online, use our photographs that we have acquired over the years. They'll write and produce a podcast, record it. You can find that on our website. We're slowly putting them on YouTube as well, but also Spotify, Apple, all that stuff. We do have a YouTube channel, just USS Slater. We don't post that often. We have just like 6,300 subscribers. It's not a main focus for us, but we do post sometimes, so that's an avenue as well. If you're able to visit, we have a small gift shop. All the money generated in the gift shop, ticket sales, donations, memberships, 100% of it goes back into the ship, mainly to restore the ship, or pay staff, interns, or insurance. Our insurance is really high.
I can imagine.
And that's for a small ship. I can't imagine what these big ships are paying. So yeah, donations go right back into the ship. You saw what all the volunteers are working on today. That is because of donations and ticket sales, everything. Allows them to come up here and work on the ship. Or of course, just come visit us.
Yeah.
We're open first Wednesday of April through Thanksgiving every season. If you're in the area in the wintertime, you can reach out to us and we'll do our best to facilitate a tour of the ship. It'll mainly be an interior space tour. We can't show the outside just because of snow and ice. But, yeah, that's everything.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much. I really
My
appreciate
pleasure.
it.
Thank you for coming out.
For everyone watching here, we will have a link to the Slater website in the description of this video, so you can click that, find all the info online. But definitely come out and visit it in person. Being able to walk through these museum ships is an incredible experience, so highly recommend that. Thank you for watching.